Stories Podcast, your number one show for everything guitar.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Guitar Stories, episode number 68. Dan, hello.
Hello, Andy. How is everything?
All is good. All is good. I was at a guitar shop yesterday, so I'm full of guitar shop energy and looking at beautiful instruments and lots of pedals and switches on and lots of amps and even bass guitars. So I'm full of joy today.
Great.
Yourself? How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm just like started the week, second day. With the weekend, I was spending the weekend on my yacht and driving in my Porsche.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry to say.
How is Malibu these days?
Oh, it's quite crowded. There's so many people stopping by, and
Sure, must be very popular.
Yeah. I don't like if they take a glimpse into the villa and everything. That's just like I don't know.
Not the normal people. Not with you, you upper class rich people.
Oh boy, what am I getting myself into? I'm gonna clarify. Like we're joking because some people obviously think that certain instruments that are being built and reviewed by Andy should not cost what they do cost because everything must be cheaper. And I was joking. We were both like joking. That's how we can afford the big cars and big houses and boats.
I'm in Malibu right now. If you're watching the live version, this is a green screen of my studio back in Austria in a basement. It's really hot. I've had to put this hoodie on.
Yeah. Look. Yeah. It says Los Angeles, California. There you go. I just bought it over there.
I'm wearing my Fender hoodie, which I got in California, just down the road.
I mean, the good thing about it is that like your trip to Fender is not exactly around the corner, but at least on the horizon, right?
Yeah, it's a small commute.
Yeah. So
pick up a few guitars.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should say hello to the people in the live chat. Hello to Valeria, to Sarang, to Alexis Guitars, to Nissan 570 LSX, to Lucas, to Michael, to Jake Lee Guitar, to you've just typed words, so I have to scroll back up again. Cranar is here, Melodify, Lucas, Guitar Ruckus, Buzzle, who else is there? April, and a few others. Michael, hello Michael. So if you're with us live, you have the honor of being joined by Phil McKnight tonight. If you're listening to the audio version, then drive safely or be safe in what you're doing. And you also have the honor of listening to the dulcet tones of Mr. Philip McKnight, who will be with us in just a moment once Dan has done his glorious introduction.
Is it already time? Okay.
It is time.
Okay. So I was telling Andy, okay, this time I tried to keep it like short and concise, so only like 3 to 4 sentences. And then like I wrote this, and he said, "That's not 3 or 4 sentences." But funny story is, if you
it may have 3 full stops, but that is not what I would say constitutes 3 or 4 sentences. So take a deep breath, wisely, my friend.
Yeah. All right. So tonight we're welcoming Philip McKnight, who's the man behind one of the largest and most insightful music gear YouTube channels called Know Your Gear. Established in 2015, his weekly Q&A live shows in regular formats like Sharpen My Axe, in which he improved stock guitars provided from his viewers with superior aftermarket parts, have helped him building a community of guitarists that share his passion of gear and music. As a previous guitar shop owner and luthier, Phil is renowned for having a seemingly endless knowledge of instruments as well as the business behind the scenes, which has helped him to build relationships to industry icons such as Mike Soldano, Paul Reed-Smith, or even Larry DiMarzio. So we're super happy to welcome him because it's the second attempt to have him on the show, and tonight is the night. We're excited. Let's say hello to Phil.
Hey.
Hello,
Hi,
Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Excellent.
All good.
How are you?
Welcome to Guitar Stories.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I feel like it's always like every story is the COVID story now, right? You're like, oh, we're gonna do it, and then COVID, then we're gonna do it, and COVID.
But you can get away with some great things that you're not motivated to do by saying, I feel a little bit ill recently.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, not only in person. right? That's how you get out in person. You're like, oh, I got a little tickle in the throat. I can't hang out with you guys. But in virtually, I don't know if that works.
No.
Yeah,
okay, scratch
enough.
that. Yeah. All right, that doesn't work. I don't have much of a life outside of this anyway, so it doesn't really
same
matter.
here.
And I'm
No.
yeah. Dan's busy in Malibu, so yeah, I
Yeah,
think it goes for all three of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome to the show, dude. We're gonna do some guitar news. We've got some gear picks of the week. Phil has chosen something. Dan has chosen something. I've chosen something, and then we're going to talk about Phil's origin story. Which how much did Dan get right, Phil, in that introduction? He's got a pretty good score normally.
Yeah, I mean that's all accurate information.
Right.
I mean, it was good. It was really good.
Great job.
Cool.
Because here's the thing with you can search the internet and you find so little information about Phil McKnight. You know, there's a little bit here and a little bit there. So yeah. It's like usually with artists, you can go on their website or go on the endorser sites and just grab the artist bio. But with you, I really had to like dug out old videos. What did he say about himself?
Yeah, I said this like 5 years ago. I was talking to a channel with 1 million subscribers. I said, and I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. It's just going to sound like one. I said, in a perfect world, I would make lots of content, but no one would know who I am. Like that would be like the perfect world.
Right.
I said, I just don't want anybody to like. There shouldn't be anything other than the guitars.
All right. Okay.
So
that's an interesting approach. Yeah.
So so it's working. I'm hiding as much information on the internet as I can.
Yeah, it's working. You're doing it.
And now we spoiled it. Like,
yeah, we've given away all your details. I just want to point out that where is it? I can't see it on the screen. It was Mosul Blues says it's good to see one YouTube pro in the show now.
Thank you.
Pretty sure he's referring to you, Phil. So thank you for increasing our street cred.
You gotta love a compliment that also has two like slams at the same time, right? Yeah. I want to make somebody feel good and somebody feel bad. How do I do that? You executed it perfectly.
So yeah, that's our top comment at the moment, if there is such a thing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, let's do some news if we may, because I've got a little bit of news, not a lot, just some stuff, and I want to play the jingle. First news today is something I want to throw on us because we haven't discussed it, Dan and Phil, is April Fools in the guitar world. This year, I was quite disappointed, generally speaking. I thought efforts were low, but also I didn't do anything. I didn't feel that April Fools was a sort of topic this year, but yet several people went for it and several people nailed it, and I think some people didn't. Does anyone have a favorite April Fools in guitar world this year?
I feel like the April Fool's jokes are slowly just turning into visual dad jokes. So they're very hit or miss, just like dad jokes. Sometimes you're like, all right, trying too hard. I think that one thing that sucks about April Fool's it's also great is that it's coming, so you're looking for it. So to me, the great April Fool jokes are the ones where you're a little confused. You want to be confused for at least a minute or so, going. And then go, oh, they're joking.
Mm-hmm.
Red Shaw, I think, did a good job with that JHS pedal. I literally couldn't tell. I had no desire to watch the video. I was watching it because I'm like, what do I want a pedal that sounds like singing? But I couldn't stop watching because I'm like, all right, is this the joke? Or did he just misalign this?
Yeah.
You know who got me? Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you know who got me on a non-April Fool's joke on April Fool's? Steve Vai. With the Hydra thing, I knew the Hydra existed, but he launched the video on April Fool's, and I was like, "Wait, I thought this guitar was serious all this time. Was this for the April Fool's joke?" And then I watched it. I'm like, "Well, it's really good. Like, this is the best April Fool joke ever because he looks like he's playing everything." And then at the end, I'm like, "No, it's just bad timing, huh?" The first.
Yeah.
Reverse April Fools. I love it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The ones that make you question your very being, like this can't be, it must be, or it isn't, and. For me, the Red Shawl and JHS was good, but because of the timing, I'm like, no way, not getting me this year.
Yeah.
I did get got by Monty's Guitars in the UK, who said it was a local tradition from the place where I'm from to give gifts of alcohol in loaves of bread, and he was just so sort of benign that it was. I forgot what the day it was, and he had this loaf of bread that he put a bottle of wine or something in and glued it closed. And I, being a local to that area, said, I don't remember that tradition. I must have missed that one. And of course, it was April Fool's, and I did get fooled.
Sweet.
Dan, I know that Ibanez did one. I actually quite enjoyed your Ibanez
Okay.
visual bodiless guitar.
Yeah. I mean, the best April Fool's jokes usually are the ones people either believe it or they actually wish for the product. So I remember like 3 years ago, we had a Martin Miller Jr. guitar, like a smaller scale Miller in pink. I still get inquiries for that model. So that's kind of pretty fantastic that it took off like that. But personally, I really enjoyed Davey 504's video. Like he had not Davey 504. It was Trogley's. Yeah, he had a video with the Gibson bass leak, and he put so much work and effort into that video. And actually, what got me was that when I saw the Davey 504 signature bass that he announced, I was like, "Huh, that sounds like a pretty logical thing." And I was like, "No, that can't be." No, but I would not have been surprised if Trogley would have released such a video, because he's always like looking in the source code of the websites for news and leaks and stuff. And also if Gibson was kind of hiding that stuff already, and usually those kind of leaks, they just get out and then they're everywhere. So that was pretty cool.
I had something nice from Attic Audio, which it's some stickers that you can put on your pedals that apparently add tone to whatever you put it on. So he's got some carbon film resistors, some orange drop capacitors, and an invent your own, some germanium diodes. And if you stick it on your pedals, then it improves your tone. And I just like the fact that you could have gone to his website, given your address, and he'll just send you them for free. And I really love stickers, so I just wanted to give him
Those
a
are
shout out.
absolutely amazing.
Kind of, I kind of felt that it was a nice idea to repurpose April Fool's into just something cool and fun rather than funny. And I said that I'd have to talk about it on the show because I really do enjoy the stickers. And now that I have done, I can stick them on things. So I'm
That's
excited
cool.
about that. But yeah,
That's
generally April Fool's, I think I think it needs to go through a renaissance. We need a new sort of April Fool's thing. Maybe just being kind to people or something like that, or being having fun.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
like I said, the game definitely gets upped. You know what I mean? I mean, the first time we started seeing a couple years ago, they were just hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I said, that's why it's tough. And I don't look for them anymore. I just, for me, I had a different problem. My podcast was landed on Friday, April 1st. And I was like, oh, no. I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to, should I just give the wrong answers the whole show and see how that goes? My wife strongly talked me out of that idea, by the way. But that was my idea going in. I was like, what if I just answer every question just blatantly wrong? And then my wife's like, what if they don't get it? I'm like, well, they'll get it. I'll be blatant. She's like, no, I don't think it's a good idea. So I was a little nervous about April Fool's because of that.
I think she was 100% correct.
Yeah, I think she was too.
Yeah.
But April Fool's next year, I couldn't top what I did. Was it last year or a few years ago when I did the Boss Clon CT3 or whatever?
Yes.
I couldn't top it. It was too much work and too much fun. So I just decided to not do it this year. Hopefully I'll be back next year with something hopefully simple and successful. But I got me some stickers. I might copy that idea. So I want to move on to a second piece of news, which is important to me and some of our viewers, and that is today is the 28th anniversary of the death of Kurt Cobain, meaning that he's been dead longer than he was alive, which makes me firstly feel old and confused. But I was at Klangfarbe, the music shop in Vienna, and I saw this Kurt Cobain tribute night at the Loft, which is a bar in Vienna that I've been to a few times, and they have a 90s club, which is obviously sounds for me amazing, but makes me again feel a little step older. And 28 years without Kurt Cobain seems like such a long time.
It's crazy.
So R.I.P. Kurt. And in fact, only last week we were talking about Taylor Hawkins, which yeah, that's just reminded me again. Wow. So, yeah, I just wanted to put it out there. I want to move on, do the positive thing. But 28 years without Kurt Cobain, I wouldn't be here. And then by proxy, neither would anyone right now. So, yeah, it was kind of important. And I've got behind me my Kurt Cobain signature.
Hey, that's
Oh,
good.
nice.
Which is awesome. With
And on the brighter
pickups.
Hey,
About what?
on the brighter side, I mean, actually, you holding that fire is something that's like a positive thing to happen even 28 years after he has passed away, that people still remember him and celebrate his music, and that he's still around, if not as a physical person, at least his spirit and his idea how he wanted his music to sound like. And so yeah.
Let's just stay on death for a moment. Fergie in France says it's also 10 years today since Jim Marshall passed away.
All right.
Okay, well,
Have you ever met Jim Marshall?
I did. Yes.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, I met him. He was at the NAMM show. That's when he was in a wheelchair. Remember, towards the end, he was just always in a wheelchair.
Mm.
And the interesting thing was, this is before I had a YouTube channel. So it was right before I started making any YouTube videos. I filmed the entire interaction with him. And I asked him a question about 412 cabinets. He told me the story. And then when I did the 5 things you don't know about Marshall cabinets, I told the story. And then I had people at the NAMM show from Marshall telling me that was wrong. And I go, oh, you want to see the video on my phone of Jim Marshall telling me the story? And then but it made me nervous, like, well, he was getting a little old towards the end. Maybe the story, maybe I just fell for it. I don't know. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure. But I'm like, either way, he's the one who told me the story.
Okay.
So, but yeah, he was super nice. I mean, that was, the NAMM show, that was what was great. You can walk around and just talk to the inventors of things. They just sit there and you just like walk up to them and ask them anything. Hartley Peavy, Jim Marshall, just say, it's great.
Yeah.
will you be at NAMM this year, Phil?
I always say I'm never going, and then I always go. So I always stick with that answer.
Okay. Answer accepted. I will not see you there then.
Yeah, I'm like, it's like you're like, this is the year. I'm not going. And then I go a week before, I go, well, I'm going to go. See, for me, it's easy because it's a 6.5, 7 hour drive tops. So,
All right.
I could leave at noon and be there in the afternoon. So I'll.
As Europeans, Dan and I have to sort of get confused by that being not a very long time to drive.
Yeah, that's like from Germany from north to south. Like,
yeah. I could drive to you, Dan, in about 6 hours.
Yeah, correct.
We should start doing that. I could leave at midday and I'll be with you by the time for the show. It's easy.
There you go.
But yeah, I knew that. So I knew this. Someone was going to comment this, and that is that Sarang said, "I really want to meet Mr. Harley Benton someday," because I thought you were going to say Harley Benton, Phil, when you said Harley Peavy, and when you did the Harley Benton video at Tolman, it was so much fun. So thank you, Sarang, for that.
You're never going to meet him. I've decided he's just too cool. You can't find him.
Don't meet your heroes. No.
That would actually make for a pretty interesting video. Like music industry people you're never going to meet, like Mr. Hughes Kettner, Mr. Harley Benton.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know what? That would be a good video. Andy, you should make it. It's a video on people that don't exist. Like, how many companies have like people that don't exist? There's probably more than you would think.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that, Andy? With like when I'm dealing with smaller companies, sometimes they'll be like, the brand is called, let's say, Jones, and I'm like, and your name's Jones, right? And they're like, no, my name's like Dave, and you're like, or Davis, and I'm like, oh, who's Jones? Like, nobody. I'm like, oh, all right.
Yeah. Often, yes and no, but the one I like is when I don't get any name whatsoever. It's just from the company. So after about 3 or 4 emails, I'm like, do you want to tell me your name now? And I know for a fact that it's actually several people because the email sort of changes, and I feel like I at the bottom rung, I talk to some person who just blanket emails everybody, and then you get pushed off to somebody else. So I like to collect names of people from the company, whichever company it may be. That's a fun game.
I don't want to run anything off the rails, but my favorite is to see how generic they can make the email, but still apply to everyone they want to send it to.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes I'm so impressed by it because they go like it's really like. And sometimes they throw that one token in there, like you have X many subscribers. So you're like, okay, well at least they check that, right? Or they have your name, like something, right? They have something, one thing, but then everything else was templated, right? But my favorite are the ones like, it's so generic. They could be talking to 1,000 people. This email could have been sent out to 1,000 people and apply. You have YouTube. That is great. We want to work with you. We've really enjoyed your videos of recently.
I like it when it just says, an email says, "Dear," and then "The Guitar Geek," all in one with no spaces, because I know they copied and pasted it from my channel. Yeah. We really love your videos. Do you? Which ones in particular do you love? That's always my first response. Which ones did you think that I was brilliant at? And which ones did you not like? Just give me a top 10.
It's like meeting people and say, "I'm a huge fan of your channel." All right.
Yeah. No. The trick is, I've learned the trick. I was talking to Adobe DOS one night, and we figured it out.
Okay.
It's when they say, "I've seen your videos." That's the thing that they can get away with, because they go, "Oh, I've seen your videos." That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean they like you, dislike you. It's really, and then you go, "Well, I don't know what that meant." Walk away.
It's like, I accept your presence.
Yeah, you exist.
You exist.
I can accept that.
I'm going to start doing that to people.
Yeah,
Hi, Phil. I've seen your videos.
Yeah.
And the way you say it can really it can be quite menacing. I've seen your videos.
Well, in my particular case, what was funny was they go, "I've seen your videos." I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad you liked them." And then we talked about it later, and I'm like, "Well, actually, they didn't say they liked them. In fact, they didn't say anything."
Oh, that's a good one. Charlie Cooper from Orange says, "I know of your videos." That's pretty good. Yes. That's even more neutral. That's very, very on the surface. Maybe you could just walk up to someone and say, "Videos."
I recognize you have a channel on YouTube. How's that?
Good. That's pretty good.
It's just like a statement.
Polite.
Yeah, it's just a statement.
Right, I want to talk some gear, gentlemen.
Right.
Let's go gear. Let me change my screen just here. Picks of the week. I would like, Phil, would you mind going first with your pick of the week?
Sure.
Or it could be you or Dan. I'll let you choose, Phil, because I absolutely have to go last this week because it's a bit of a competition. And
do you have the photo, or
bend the rules?
Do I wait for the
I
photo,
do have the photo. I will put it on screen right now, sir. There you go.
Look at that. So this is the new Ibanez for 2022, and they came out with a new color, right?
Yay.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is a big deal because this is the guitar I want with Fishmans. I played this one in the what's the blue called, Dan?
Frozen Ocean.
In Frozen Ocean. I remember it was at the was at one of the events or something. I don't know how I got my hands on it.
The Using Kettner show.
Using Kettner. And I love the finish, but I wasn't excited about the ash body sticking through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love the guitar, and I kept thinking, man, if they made that guitar in a different finish, I would definitely consider it. And then bam. And then, of course, flip-flop. I love this because ever since they made the John Mayer flip-flop and people have decided that, flip-flops should cost $1 gazillion. Oh, look at him holding it. This is it. This is a...
that's me. Hang on. We'll stick Dan. There you go, Dan. Dan has it in his hands, dear audio listeners. It is flipping and flopping together.
This look you guys did took me so much time to decide I liked. This idea that the back and sides are unfinished or, wood exposed, right? Even though it's got a finish on there. And then painting the top like a Gibson gold top. And at first I was like, this is horrible. And then slowly over time, it grows on you. And you're like, all of a sudden you're like, okay, I like this. I don't know why I like it more and more. And the thing I like about that guitar especially is that tremolo with Fishmans, man, it's cool. It's almost like having a Sustainiac. You hit a note because those pickups sustain so well. So, yeah.
Can you hear that sound?
Yeah.
That sounds like my kitchen door. I have a thing on my kitchen door that makes that sound.
Guitar
You're just walking
ASMR.
up all the dogs in the countries around the world. There we go. Let's look at the back quickly. So what's the model number of this, Phil?
I have no idea. A bunch of letters.
That's the
Bunch of
RG
letters and numbers.
5120M.
5120M.
I do every Ibanez video. I do the same way. I don't even say the name, and then when I finish, I do the video editing. I edit over the name of the guitar. I have decided that is my semi-unofficial protest against Ibanez not naming names. I know Dan gets it every day, but it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I think Ibanez just does it at this point out of spite because they know they got that feedback so consistently. You know what I mean? Just call them names.
That's the problem.
What would you call that, Phil? What would you name that if you could
give it a
name
name
that
like
guitar?
the unofficial film.
Putting you on the spot for a moment.
Yeah, now you put me on the spot.
So it's got this edge. Which edge is that, Dan?
Low Pro.
It's the Low Pro. Okay.
I would call it. I know it sucks because it's kind of a Gibson name, but it's to me it's the fitting name for that. It's the RG Vintage Classic because it's got a little vintage thing going on with that top being on there, right? Or Vintage Modern. I'm sorry, Vintage Modern.
Vintage Modern. Okay. Yeah.
Right, Vintage Modern. To me, that's what that reminds me of. It's like that's why I think I fell in love with these. It's like what I like about old Ibanez 80s, 90s era RGs, and then something about more classic behind that. But then the Fishman's bringing it, to the modern future and with the laminate neck. So it's the RG Modern, Vintage Modern.
Okay.
Instead of the RG bunch of letters.
I've got a good one. Hang on. I'm just going in my head. Fisherman on the edge. That's awful. Hang on, no. Fishy flip-flop edge. No, Phil, yours is better. Vintage, yeah, I'm with Phil on that, absolutely.
Yeah. What about Prestige Progressive Series?
No Prestige, because here's the for me, Prestige and Premium is just labeling like tiers. Like to me, it's like S2 versus Core.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's never part of the name for me. Even when you guys put on the headstock, I don't even know why it's on the headstock sometimes, because to me it's just a label of the tier structure that you guys use, not really the name of the guitar. Just to me.
That would go at the end, wouldn't it? It would go whatever the name is, then Prestige.
Yeah. Because then when you do it that way, then you just make a Premium and a Prestige, and then I'll buy the Premium.
Which would be the perfect segue to our main discussion, but we should save it for later.
Yes, we'll save that for later. We'll come back to it
in a moment.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, can we move on to your pick, or have you got more to say on Phil's pick? Or
like just a couple additions. I really like the idea of calling it like a vintage modern, because it adds a couple of features to what people would expect from an RG series, like stainless steel frets, like the Fishman Fluence pickups. It's just like, taking the old 1987 concept and bringing it to 2022. That's really what this is all about. Mahogany body. It's got the ash top, although you can't see it. And that's the basic recipe.
Especially now. I mean, Ibanez, the RG is vintage. You know what I mean? I mean, when did the RGs come out? 87? 86?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All right. So we're talking about Kurt Cobain passed away 28 years ago, right? I mean, this predates that. So that's what I said. At this point, Ibanez can now do the thing that the other big guys do, which is tap into their history and say, look, we went into the history in 1987 and we got an RG and we made it a little bit more modern.
You could find a pencil drawing of something that was designed and not released.
Maybe something that is like tulip shaped.
Yes.
With a banana headstock or something.
Yes.
No, it has to be daffodil or rose or something.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
I've just noticed that we have 117 people watching right now. Which, Phil, certainly relates to you, because I think that's a record this early on in the show. It normally takes us at least 4 hours to get to 116. But we're on 170. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Yeah. It is Dan's turn to choose some gear. So Dan gets a little jingle for this, Phil. You didn't get a jingle. I'm very sorry. But Dan does get one. It's Dan's pick of the week.
Dan's pick of the week. Dan's pick of the week.
I love that jingle. And he made it. That was like a
So,
super
Dan, what is your pick of the
quickly
week?
made surprise. My pick of the week. Can you show a picture maybe of my pick of the week? And quite
Ka-ching.
coincidentally,
Yes, I can.
ka-ching. Oh, now Phil is gone, but he's temporarily
moved you. There you
replaced.
go.
No,
There you
I'm
go.
I
gone.
knew you were
That's
gonna pick that. I
Yeah.
called that because you posted it on his Instagram, and he was.
What is it,
cooing
Dan?
after it.
We have people listening on audio. Tell us what it is.
All right, that's the new Ibanez GRG 121 SP, and this is a very special model because it had been released in the States as some sort of spot production kind of thing, and we were so impressed by the qualities of the sample that we received that we were like, we need that model, we need that for Europe, and basically now it has become a regular model, shipping from I think late June or something, and it's like my new favorite budget guitar. And budget really isn't really the right term for that instrument because it's a sub 300 euros roasted maple RG, and I love the paint job. It's amazing. I showed you a couple pictures. It looks so much like more expensive, and it looks just glorious. I mean, and the cool thing about that is that spec wise, it kind of combines serious bones. It puts together all the ingredients you would expect from a affordable yet quality guitar. That kind of brings all the values to the table that you really need for as a gigging musician, but you don't have to spend like $1,000 or something to get an instrument that you can actually gig with. And like I said, the roasted maple is something that's like the USP for that instrument. It blew me away, and I'm not exaggerating.
Sorry, say that again. Roasted maple.
It's got a roasted maple neck and a Jatoba fretboard, yeah. And that roasted maple neck, usually those kind of guitars from Chinese factories, they sometimes can feel a little bit, I don't know what's the right term, not cheap, but different, compared to, let's say, a higher tier premium or prestige model. And that neck was the first time I kind of played it, it felt immediately like a much higher priced instrument. And that was something where I kind of wrote back to Japan. And I was like, is that a roasted maple neck? And is that new machinery you're using? They were like, oh, glad you noticed. Yeah, it is. So new factory, new model, amazing. That's my favorite by far. I would pick that guitar over every other budget model, not because of the name on the headstock, but just because the neck is gorgeous. It's got classic elite humbuckers, so that's Ibanez proprietary pickups, not like quantum pickups or resolution or all the other like lower tier pickups. It's kind of already the next level when it comes to the pickups. It's got a fixed bridge, which is also often a point of concern for a lot of beginners if they have a affordable guitar and the tremolo is not tuning stable. So it will stay in tune perfectly. Poplar body, a great paint job. I'm just like, I was blown away by that. We had other models like the GRG 220 that got released as well with the shark fin inlays. And
hang on, Dan, you're not at work. Chill out. It's okay. Relax.
All right.
You're amongst friends. Calm down.
I know. But I'm so excited about it.
I feel for him. I find the only thing I get excited anymore about is inexpensive guitars that are good now.
Yeah.
It's weird. Nothing impressed me. When somebody hands me a guitar and I go, wow, and they go $5,000, I go, oh, of course. Yeah. Then I put like, you're like, of course. Because if it was sucky,
I have much more fun with affordable guitars than anything because it's always a surprise. It's a mystery. It's a wonder.
Yes.
Dan, what is the price of that GRG?
It's
I'm going to call it.
$299.
Oh, $299. Can I name it? I want to name it
Sure.
I want to name it the RG Nebula Lawsuit Edition.
I love it. I love it, Phil.
I think Ibanez has had this lawsuit already back in the day. So
The $299.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
crazy.
You're leaning on your past history. That's good.
Yeah,
Bring
there
it
you
back.
go. Oh yeah, the new lawsuit
In fact,
collection.
Yes.
If you the new lawsuit, you could really, really ruffle some feathers by bringing out a certain type of guitar.
Yeah. But
yeah,
I
I think it's gorgeous.
Here's the thing. I think Phil had on his channel. There was one question from a viewer that was asking: are Epiphones for collecting, for playing, and Gibsons for collecting? And I think this is what also kind of excites me about those inexpensive guitars. If I have my Sugi guitar at home, I touch it, I play it, but I'm super careful, and I wouldn't even consider gigging with it. But that guitar, I would swap pickups, I would put locking tuners on it, I would maybe, change a thing here and there, put stickers on it, and I wouldn't even mind. I would just enjoy the actual process of, morphing that instrument from the first stage to a second stage to a third stage, and go through all those iterations with just the joy of having a great like Bones guitar that can do it all, and just enjoy the process instead of thinking about, am I actually decreasing the value of the instrument? Can I ever sell it? And that's what makes it so fun to me personally, to have those inexpensive
Dan, just a
instruments.
quick question about the specs. Is it a 5-way switch or a 3-way switch on those humbuckers?
Whoa.
Is it core splittable? Really? Oh, pressure now. Because you said it can do it all, and if it's 2 humbuckers,
I think it's a
then
3-way switch. Yeah. So I might have lied here, but the rest is just like
lies upon lies.
Here's the thing. We received a couple samples, and they were kind of stowed away because the guitar was not released on January 1st. And now we sent them out to YouTubers and artists to kind of produce cool content. So we don't even have them here to play it. I would have loved to show it you the guitar in the flesh, because it's really gorgeous. But I don't have any here. They're all with artists and YouTubers. So
a lot of people are saying in the comments 5.
5-way? Okay. Well,
they're saying 5.
No better
There's
than me.
a bunch of
Thanks
comments.
for the help. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, Valeria Melodify, thank you, everybody. 5-way. In that case, Dan, I take it back. You did not lie, because you said it could do it all. And if it's got 5, I'd say that you could quite rightly say that.
Great. Thanks for the help, guys.
Yeah. It's time for my pick of the week. So I've had enough of this Ibanez, just constant Ibanez guitars and consistently talking about Dan's job. So it's my turn.
Andy's pick of the week.
Now, sorry, Dan. My pick of the week was tough, because I'd like to complain that there's not enough new gear coming out this week or last week. I had real trouble, and I think we need more. So at almost the last moment, at the 11th hour, Fender announced the Nile Rodgers signature Strat, which I dig. I love it. I think it's good. I like the fact that it's based very much on his guitar, and it looks, and I like they've got the right knobs, and it's a good Strat. And if you look at the original Strat, Fender are marketing this as the, what did they say? The hitmaker has made $2 billion worth of hits, which is insane. And it's been on songs that I didn't even know. So it's obviously been on Chic songs, and it's been on Get Lucky, but it was also on Like a Virgin by Madonna. Had no idea. So yeah, it's an important guitar, and it's nice that it's getting recognized, and Nile Rodgers is really in the news and getting recognized by Fender. And that was going to be my pick of the week, so turning it a little bit, but it's 2,800 euros, and that puts it over $3,000, which to me, I don't know, it makes it more of a less interesting. As you said, Phil, of course, $3,000, yeah, brilliant, great.
Yeah.
So my pick of the week this week is not that. My pick of the week is the same Ibanez as Dan. It's the GRG numbers, letters, because the rules of pick of the week is whatever piece of gear excites you the most in the past 7 days. And when you posted your photo of this guitar, I had no idea it was a Geo. I really, really didn't. Right. And it was only because I was busy and doing stuff. And then only when you wrote to me today, I'm going to pick that Geo, I was like, what Geo? The one I posted. That's a Geo? So, yeah, Ibanez, you've got 3 out of 3 this week, which I think is a first. Yeah. And I think it's a first that Dan and we have the same pick. Is that? Yep. Have we done that before?
Nope. Well, sometimes we've kind of shared picks, or pushed one pick to the other guy, but yeah, that's a first.
So technically, there's only 2 picks this week and they're all Ibanez. So yeah, that's going to be confusing for our next section of buy, borrow, or burn.
That's a first. Definitely a
first in Guitar Story's history.
But tell me, Andy, what's the guitar about? Does it have a 5-way switch or a?
I know so much about this guitar, Dan. I probably know more than you. It's got a color on it. Do you know something? It was very popular in the US, and it was not supposed to be an actual production run. And then we loved it so. No, not we. Damn. Some people loved it so much at Ibanez in Europe that they said we have to have that as a production run, and then they said let's make sure it can do everything and put a non-trem bridge on it, so we're going to have hardtail so the beginners don't get any tuning issues, and then we're going to put a 5-way switch on it so you can get split coil sounds and everything. I think. But I'd probably just, I'd probably buy it so I could put extra pickups in it and lock in tuners on it and not worry about it.
I think this guy in the comments, Justin, just won. Look, he says he would buy the Ibanez, borrow the Ibanez, and burn the Ibanez.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. I dig that so hard. I wish I could find the comment to put it on screen, but Restream is not being kind this evening. Okay, well, people in the chat, whilst we deliberate over what our buy, borrow, or burn brands will be, can you please decide which of these 2 picks this week you would buy, borrow, and or burn?
Buy, borrow, or burn?
So
who
I
goes
don't know how to
first?
do this. I genuinely have no idea. Shall I go first? I'll go first. I'll just throw myself out there. I would buy the Geo Ibanez. I would borrow the RG that isn't a Geo Ibanez. And then I'd burn both of them to see which one burned the longest.
Yes.
All right.
Please have something more interesting than that.
Who goes next?
Phil, guest
All right.
next. Guest in the middle. Have a Phil
I
sandwich.
would buy the Ibanez. I'm gonna buy that guitar. That's how I. That's how when you asked which one would I pick this week, I'm like, oh, I was looking at them. I'm waiting for them to get in stock, right? So I'm definitely gonna buy that one, and then I would borrow the Geo, and then I would burn the other Geo to scare the crap out of the other Geo I borrowed. To show it like that's what happens if you don't
Stay in tune, or
I would burn it to finish the neck. Like they already started cooking the neck. I just finished cooking the neck.
Wow, that's a good
Set
one.
fire
Yeah.
to it. There you go.
much better.
Thermo
Thank you,
treatment
Phil.
of the body. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, before you give us your amazing insights onto which brand you're gonna buy, borrow, and burn this week, let's have a look at the people in the chat. So Fergie in France would buy Phil's Ibanez, borrow the Geo. I'm a Prestige J-Craft convert. Okay, you've not chosen a burn there, Fergie. You know the rules. What else we got? We've got Lucas, buy the Geo lawsuit, borrow the RG Modern Prestige. Got to burn something. Got to burn. People are forgetting to burn. Lukens, that's a second Lukey kind of person. Buy the Fender, borrow the RG, and burn the other one. Okay, also pushing the rules there, but I like it. It's creative. Craner would buy the Geo, borrow the IG, burn both boxes they came in, so they don't go back. Very clever. Then when you borrow, it can't be returned.
Nice.
What about Justin? Oh, this is Justin, the one that would buy, borrow, and burn every Ibanez. Okay, now seriously, buy the Geo, borrow the IG, never burn an Ibanez. Dan, how do you feel about that? You feel happy now? Nice and warm, as if you're sitting beside an RG fire. Paul, this is quite cool. Paul would use a random number generator to decide which random number model to buy or borrow. Okay, so enough from the chat. Dan, please reveal which brand would you buy or borrow or burn this week?
Which brand or which model?
Either way.
Either way. Okay, so I would definitely buy the Geo because, like I said, it's the perfect mod platform, and I'm super excited that Japan kind of gave permission to have this model for the German and Eastern markets. So that's pretty cool. I would borrow the Prestige because I've got already a lot of guitars, and I don't know if I need another Prestige high-end guitar. It's a nice one, but not necessarily something that I desperately need around. And I would burn the boxes too because I don't need them. I would even burn the case because I don't like hard cases anyway. So I'll just stick with gig bags. They are, they consume much less space, and they will do it. How's that?
Okay.
Aren't you glad no one cares what YouTubers think? Because otherwise, like, you could see if the press followed us, it would be YouTubers refuse to recycle cardboard and instead burn it.
True.
Yeah.
Although the amount of guitar boxes I have in my house, I think I could probably start a little guitar box city. So,
I have an exemption in my town. I'm not kidding. I have 2 recycle cans. So I have 2 blue, the big recycle cans, because I go through so much cardboard each week. And we have a cardboard day where we cut it all up. And so my wife called the city and said, "Can we get 2 recycled trash cans?" And they said, "Yeah." So I have 2 recycled trash cans a week that get picked up, big ones, because so much cardboard.
Get you in the special treatment. That's awesome.
That's right.
I'm glad it's being recycled.
Yeah. Yes.
In a similar way, I take a Saturday morning trip with my kids to the local recycling place, which is 5 minutes up the road, and I let them throw them in the compacting thing.
Oh,
cool.
Assuming I haven't used or purposed them, and my son wants to be a robot for a week or something, which happens quite often. I say my son, it's me. I like to be a robot. Sometimes I let him play with me. Yeah, well, I'm amazed that we had all Ibanez, but the rules of the game is what excites you the most. So I have to be honest, and we're all honest. And Dan was always going to choose one of those anyway, because that's his passion. Got to be passionate.
Agree.
Yes.
So thank you, chat people, for joining in. And we get to do our little thank you again to Phil for joining us. And we do our Phil topic. And then we're going to move on to talking about the country of origin of guitars, which we've kind of hinted at several times in this conversation. And I'm very excited to know what the people in the chat think as well, because you are the people that purchase these guitars and therefore the ones that make the real decisions. So make sure you chime in and join in with the conversation. But I'll do a little jingle so we can have a little break. Tonight we are joined by Mr. Philip McKnight, our guest in episode number 68. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have so much experience.
Thank you for bringing so many people with you. There's loads of people watching, so thanks for doing that. Yeah, we wanted to get a bit into your guitar story, which I know has been covered several times, but because you're trying to keep as anonymous as possible and keep things off the internet, maybe we could delve a little bit deeper. So I know Dan's got some questions for you, so I'll let you lead, Dan.
All right. Well, if we start with the origin story, of course, I would be intrigued to hear what was like the first guitar you picked up, and what made you kind of pick up a guitar at all.
The first guitar I ever picked up, or my first guitar.
Your first guitar. Yeah.
My first guitar was a JB player. So I wanted to play guitar, like how everybody says, like, I wanted to get girls or whatever they say. It has nothing to do with me.
No idea what you're talking about.
I literally, my friend started playing guitar, and like everybody that I knew, you were just looking for stuff to do all the time. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, guitar, that's something to do. And I didn't know that there was bass players and guitar players. So I thought, oh, Nicky Sixx from Motley Crue, that guy's cool. I want to do what he does. So I thought he played guitar. So I bought a guitar. And so I got a JB player, a Fender knockoff, and went into the music store. It was the typical music store where you go in and they didn't care at all. You're like, what are you into, kid? And I'm like, I like Motley Crue. And he's like, cool, here's a single coil Strat and an amp with no distortion. I'm like, yeah.
Perfect fit, yeah.
Yeah, so I had that, and then once I figured out, how bad it was. No tuner, by the way. I used to have to go to when I go to lessons, my teacher would tune the guitar, and then I would practice what he taught me until my guitar would slowly fall out of tune during the week, and then I would just make up songs on out of tune guitars until it was time to go back and get tuned again. But I worked my butt off because I figured out real fast that you need distortion, you know what I mean, to rock out. So that's where the carrot came from with my parents. My mom was like, I'll buy you whatever this pedal is, but you got to show me you're good. And I go, okay. So I just would practice to get a pedal. So,
all right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Do you, I don't know how it was in the States, but in Europe or in Germany, to be more precise, we had those kind of tuning pipes. There were like a star, you know, and each tip had like a different tone, and then you would blow in and then tune it. It was like, it sounds like that was ancient Greek times compared to, you know, today you just take a smartphone and then you tune it up.
Well, they were, to put it in reference, they were $12 for that thing. So like that's how it broke down. You went in the music store, the Sabine tuners were $50. And the pitch pipe tuners were like $12. So when you're in a world where you're like, okay, the guitar is used JB player Strat and a little CMC 1/6-inch speaker used amp and the, you know, those free crappy guitar cables, that's like $150. There's no budget for anything besides, you know, at $150, there's no budget for like to take it up to $170 and stuff. So no guitar stand, no tuner, none of that stuff. You know, you just go in and, you know how a lot of people probably started their journey this way. Your parents basically go, yeah, we want to buy them a guitar for like $50. And then the store owners like laugh, ha 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 ha, there's no such thing as that price point, right? Because that's how it works with all parents, right? They have a price in their head that doesn't exist. And they're like, we could get you this hunk of crap for $150. And then your parents are like, all right, that's what it's going to cost. You know what I mean? And then that's what you get. And then if you, so yeah, to try to get a pitch pipe, it's like, you know, and in my guitar lessons were $8 a lesson. And yeah, which was expensive, right? Well, it was $8 to $10 depending on, you know. And so I didn't ask for anything because sometimes I would get, I've told this story before, sadly enough. Sometimes I would get money for lessons. Like that's how it worked in my house, right? Like that was luxury expenses came when they came, right? My parents, no matter how much I tried to explain to my mom that you have to go every week to your teacher's lesson, right? She didn't understand that. She just like on Monday, she either gave me the lesson money that week or she didn't, right?
Okay.
And if she did, I went to my lesson. If she didn't, I just made up a reason why I couldn't be there to the teacher. You know what I mean? So he wouldn't kick me off the roster. I'd be like, and then slowly, I guess, you know, because he's not stupid, he figured out like I was only going to come when I could come because I'd come in a row 3-4 times and I would be missing one. He would just start plugging me in where there was lessons. But so the reason I tell you that is there's no way I could ask for $12 for a pitch pipe. It was already hard enough to get the lesson money. You know, you don't want to add to the problem. Go, I need this tuner, and they're like, well, then let's quit lessons. You know, like no, let's step backwards. Let's not do that. So.
I remember breaking a string on the school bass guitar, and I had to spend all my pocket money like for the month to get a bus to the local city to go to the music shop to buy a string that cost £4. And then get to the bus back and then go to school and sheepishly give it to the school teacher who I thinking back then, why did he make me pay for the string if the school, it was like a 70s, possibly an Ibanez. No, it was yeah, I think it was. Yeah. So I think it was a punishment for playing music that he didn't like on it, which was 3-chord punk. But yeah, those first guitars are funny. So how did you get, Phil, from first guitar and all those, pretty much begging for lessons to owning a music shop, to being so far, being on the other side of the counter, I guess, and
sure,
and selling those $12 pitch pipes?
Now let's make them 14.
Yeah. Well, what's that's a good. Well, what's sad is tuners got dirt cheap in the early mid 90s. They just became cheap. I still have my Korg tuner that I paid $90 for in '94. Right.
Wow.
It was a big deal. It was $89 plus tax, and and then now you can get a Snark for $7 on Amazon if you know what I mean. That's accurate within half a cent probably. So how that worked is real simple. I did what everybody did that's poor. I joined the military. So at some point, that's what happens. Actually, I actually got a job. It's funny. When I was a kid, I was going to community college at first, and I was working in a music store, and my girlfriend, who's my wife, well, we've known each other since we were 13 years old. We've known each other a long time. We weren't dating or anything. We just knew each other sometimes. But we were dating, and you know, like anybody, you work in a music store and you're like, hey, you're broke, right? Just minimum wage broke. And so what happened was I decided, well, I'm good at talking to people. Can I make more money if I talk to people besides about musical instruments? And I was driving home from work thinking about how broke I was. And I saw a furniture store was hiring. And so I walked in and I go, hey, you know, when I interviewed, and they hired me, you know, as a salesperson for furniture. And it was a private, you know, owner operated business. And it was a huge pay bump for me. It was huge. And everybody was excited. My wife, which is my girlfriend, was excited, you know, for rent. And then one day, this is why it's crucial to this story. One day, some lady bought a couch, a black leather couch, and she went to pick it up, and there was a mark on it. And the owner told me to take like this little Sharpie and like mark it, you know, hide it. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. Now, keep in mind, I can't not have work. Like our rent is like, I'm like $8 away from not making rent you know, on any given month. And and so I was like, yeah, I can't do that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to mark that. I'm not going to cover that. That's stupid. And so you can imagine I got fired on the spot. So I didn't know how to go home and tell my girlfriend, like, oh, hi, I don't have rent. Right. So I stopped at the recruiting station and joined the Army. And I came back and I go, hey, bad news, I don't have a job. Good news, I have a job. And so,
wow. Okay.
What a day.
Yeah, what a day. So the reason why that's important is that all ties into, you know, the rest is boring, but it involves me, you know, getting out of the service. And then in the job world, I got a corporate job. You know what I mean? That's where I ended up. So I ended up in a corporate job. I did risk management for a large Fortune 500 company. I was making good money. And I decided, because everything was going great, that I should start building bass guitars for fun. You know, because I wanted to. I was playing bass, and I started building them. And I sold a couple few. This is important to the story. Dan might remember this more than Andy. Do you remember in the early 2000s, so we want to say late 90s, early 2000s, the bass market took off. Like Victor Wooten and all those guys became huge.
Yeah.
So the important part of the story, Andy, is like $4,000 basses were a thing. Like there was bass stores across the U.S. that just sold basses and just high-end basses. Really? So I started making these basses, and I was selling them, and I was like, you know, and you get full of yourself because you're like, oh, I'm doing so good. I'm going to become a bass builder. So I took one of the designs that I liked, and I had it made overseas because that's what everybody ends up doing. And what I learned was the first first container of instruments you get, they're not very good.
When you say container, are we talking like 20 foot or 40
yeah,
foot?
full container.
Wow.
Like, okay. So Dan has referenced this. So you can imagine I have a container full of bass guitars that are all one design, one model, my bass, and they all need work. Mm-hmm. So I would come home every day at 5 o'clock from my corporate job and work until 2-3 in the morning in my shop fixing these basses so we could sell them. Right? No. And I got really good at doing them fast. A lot of fret work, which is why I'm probably hyper focused on fret work, because that's usually where everybody skimp on your instrument. And so I was like, oh, this is cool. So what was funny was my wife would sell them during the day. So I'd go to work, I'd fix them all night, go to work during the day, and my wife would sell them. We sold a lot. We had no idea what we were doing. I mean, by that, not only did I not know what I was doing, we had no idea at the time. That was a lot. We were selling a lot. We thought we were selling nothing. Like, we didn't know. We thought, well, you sell 1 million guitars, you're doing okay, I think. You know, right? Like when you sell 1,000 instruments and you're like, I guess that's a start. You know what I mean? It was just crazy. And long story short, this part's the weird part. I had a horrible thing happen, car accident happen. And it's a very long, horrible story. It ends like this. I decided, I was like, I'm not going to work in corporate America anymore. Nothing against my job. I love that job. Still this day, I'm friends with everybody there. Love that job. And I go, I got to do something else. Right. So I decided, hey, this is crazy. I hate talking like this because I sound like a crazy person. So I went to a music store to buy a bass one day. right? This is all happening at the same time. This life-changing event. Go to this music store, buy a bass. Typical story that we all have. You know, you go in there, it's like $1,600 for this bass. The guy behind the counter doesn't even give a crap. He doesn't want to help me get it down. He doesn't want to talk to me about it, right? I ring up like against his will. He sells it to me, right? It was a used Warwick. I'm just trying to get some questions answered, you know, to make sure I'm. So this is funny. So I go home. This is supposed to make me feel better. I was in a mode where I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy this bass and feel better. Instead, all I'm thinking about what a, you know, idiot that guy was. Next day, I go to the mall with my wife. She buys a blouse. Okay, we go into the store. I walk in. There's a girl. She's folding the clothes. The other girl walks up to us. She's like, "Oh, what are you looking for?" My wife tells her. She gets out a couple samples, takes her to the dressing room. They try them on. My wife goes to the counter. She's like, "Oh, we have a 2-for-1 coupon. Oh, do you want some like perfumes on sale?" Right? We leave the store. We're walking in the mall, and I go, "How much was that?" She's like, $30-something. I go, "You just had like 1,000 times better experience than I just had spending $1,600 yesterday." And I go, "I'm going to open a music store." And she laughed. And then 30 days later, I opened up a music store.
Wow.
Because
it was within a period of time to realize.
Yeah, it was no time at all. I just literally go, okay, well, I know. So, and then what was funny was the basses that I sold were called McKnight basses. The store was called McKnight Guitar Company, for no other reason than the store was supposed to be called The Guitar Company. I had this great idea, like, you know, Tiffany and Company, you know, the jewelry store.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, the Guitar Company. And so I got the name, have the store built out, getting the signage. The week that the store is going to open, like a week before the store's open, there's a thing on 60 Minutes about how this lady named Sam Buck is being sued because her coffee place is called Sam Buck's, even though she named it that because her name's Sam Buck. And she did it before Starbucks, but Starbucks was suing her into the ground, right? And then all of a sudden I go, oh man, what if the Guitar Center doesn't like that I'm called The Guitar Company, right? And I go, oh crap, what am I going to do? So I changed the name to McKnight Guitar Company. I was like, oh, they can't sue me for my name. So I changed to McKnight Guitar Company. And then what happened, which was stupid in retrospect, we opened the store and I was selling my basses at the same time. And I had no perception like I do now. Friends that knew me would come in the store and be like, oh, so you opened a store to sell your basses? And I'm like, no, this is a real music store. We have Schecter and Fender. And I also have my basses. And they're like, and it would drive me nuts that they would say that. Like I was like, no, these are like, I have two businesses now. One's the music store and one's the basses. So instead I shut down the basses, which was dumb because that's where I was making all the money. That's what funded the store. That's where everything was coming from. But I had convinced myself that no one would come to the store because, you know, 8 people knew about my basses. Right. And
yeah, of course.
Yeah, right. You have no concept of scale. You just know your environment.
It's in the head, isn't it? It's so much of this is psychology and self reflection.
Yeah, it is. Everything has a learning curve.
I'm glad you did, because now you're here. You know, it's a happy ending.
And like I said, sure. and then fast forward, I had the store for
we got
13 years. Oh, are we losing people?
Nope, still here.
Okay. Andy's a little. No? Yep. Okay, everything's fine. So yeah, I had the store for almost 13 years, and then what happened was, I did the repair. I was the repair guy, so I did repair. We ran the store. We had a lesson academy. My wife would run the lesson academy, which was a big separate business on itself, and then started making YouTube videos. No, it's not true. I started making Facebook videos for my friend, and then we put them on YouTube. Doesn't matter. That's just how it went. And YouTube started doing its thing. You know what I mean? And the last thing I needed was another job. Like, you know what I mean? That was the last thing I was looking for. I was looking for, like, wouldn't this be funny? Like, if I make this video about this thing, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it would be fun. And then I found myself, like, every day now back to the same world I was in before. I get up 6 o'clock in the morning. I make YouTube videos until 9:30. Then I get to the store at 10 a.m. Then I work till 9. Then I get home and I finish up editing the YouTube video, right? And they were unlike, I always use this as a reference. Andertons is a perfect example. Unlike the Andertons guys that were able to take their YouTube presence and their store presence and connect them. Part of my problem was having a store that was a front door. Everything was going out the front door. It's not really an internet store, right? So your YouTube doesn't really matter because talking to 6,000 people where 89% of them are not in your city, they're not buying from your store. So they're not helping you. The other problem I had was being the repair guy. It didn't take long for viewers / customers to start connecting the two. And one of the things it would do to me, which is that's why I warn a lot of channels now about, they drop off a guitar for a refret, and I go, okay, I'll be done in a week. And then I'd make a video on Thursday, and they go, hey, is my guitar done? I saw you had time to make a video. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's not done. It's remember I said on Thursday, I will be done on Tuesday. You know what I mean? And then it just would work that way. Like they would figure like.
About like I gotta ask about what year was that? Was that like 2000-ish?
So I started. Okay, so I can tell you exactly. I put videos on YouTube as early. I think you can find them as 2014. Like you transfer them over.
14.
From,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing though for me is I didn't do YouTube. In fact, I can tell you exactly how YouTube works in my mind. For me, is in 2017 in January, I decided I wasn't going to do YouTube anymore. Like I was just done with something. I didn't care what. And so I told my wife I had every intention to go, okay, I'm going to quit doing this YouTube thing. It doesn't matter anyways, right? I'm going to quit doing it. And part of my problem was, Andy can understand this. You were getting paid for YouTube, right? But I didn't know how to get paid from YouTube. I didn't decide then, like, should I get paid personally from YouTube? Should it go to the LLC? My LLC is my store and my other business. You know what I mean? How do I want to connect all this? I have a partner with another business, so I have to give them part of my YouTube money. So at some point, and you understand it's not a lot of money, Andy can tell you. It's not a lot of money, but it was building up over a period of 2 years.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And I hadn't taken any dividends because I didn't know what to do with it. So I go, okay, I think I'm going to just pay it to myself, stop doing YouTube and call it a day. January of 2017, I told my wife, I'm going to go to the NAMM show, do the store business like I normally do some YouTube business, because that was double duty too, by the way, right? Mm-hmm. Business meetings. Yeah. And Andy can tell you, or not Andy, Dan can tell you, because he's in the business of that side of the NAMM show and booths. It was really hard for companies to like disconnect me from, oh, this is my store time, let's do the order. And this is, hey, let's make a YouTube video there. And these are mutually different things. There was no concept of that to them. I told my wife and my partner, I said, when I come back, I'm never going to do YouTube again, or I'll never come back to the store again. And that was kind of lighthearted. Like I wasn't going to like really do that. But I went to the NAMM show and I was waiting for this epiphany, right? This moment, like, I don't know what was going to happen. I thought I was going to go to I didn't know, like, was it going to be like a crowd of people are going to run up and be like, you're the guy on YouTube? I didn't know, right? What I remember about the show was, I always like telling the story. I was handing out picks of Know Your Gear picks. I remember some guy walked up to me and he's like, hey, can I have a pick? I'm like, yeah, here you go, man. And he's like, oh, I love your channel. And then, or he said, you have a channel. and then I remember I went to the restroom to go pee, and he went in before me, and then he came out and I went in to go pee, and my pick was like laying under the urinal. Like you could see where he tossed it. And I was like looking at it going, yeah, I don't think this is real. So what's funny was, and you got to go back to 2017, which isn't that long ago, but it really tells you a story, which is why I like sharing this part. It wasn't that I had a YouTube channel that was a thing. It wasn't anything that had to do with me. You know what it was? No one seemed at the show. No company knew YouTube existed yet. And I go, how can this thing that I think is like 10 years old, and I'm old, and I'm on it, and it's lame, right? Because it's already been done to death by everybody. How can the entire industry as a whole still like YouTube, you say? You put videos out? You know what I mean? And you're like,
do that for a living?
Yeah. Well, and not even that. Think of it from their attitude, right? Or their perspective, right? Who cares if I get $116 for making a video? I say this proudly all the time. A channel with 5,000 subscribers can sell $1 million worth of gear. I've seen it happen. I've experienced it me personally. I've seen it with channels. I've seen companies, especially small companies, literally get put on a map because they had all of a sudden they got thrown in front of Like I always remind people, it's not about Gibsons and Fenders. Look, they need mass audience. They need millions to sell because they sell millions. When you're talking about a company that would love to sell 500 guitars in a year, and a video can sell 160 of them, that's crazy, right? To get a return on investment like that, you know what I mean? And so what was funny was walking around the show. That's what I came out with, driving home, 6-hour drive back. I'm like, yeah, no one knows what this is. So I go, I wonder what would happen if you put effort into this. You know what I mean? Besides just making videos, like what if you like, do the companies not? And so I came back and I literally told them, I said, yeah, I'm not coming back to the store. I'm going to just do YouTube. Well, not just do YouTube. I have another, thing too I do. And they said, okay. And then there was no intent to close the store, but they closed about 6 months later because the lease was due and the anchor store had moved out of the shopping center. And they came to me, both Ralph and my wife, Shauna, said, yeah, we're kind of sick of the daily, like, is Phil here? You know what I mean? And they're like, no, we can help you. Like, yeah, but is Phil coming in? And then they found themselves like doing this thing where like, well, he's going to be on Thursday. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so they were like, yeah, we're not going to do it. So that's how that ended up. And then I went to GitCon and that happened. That was the same year. That's when all that happened, right in that moment.
That seems so few years ago, but it was in YouTube terms and in marketing terms as well for this company. It is decades ago, and 2018, Phil, was the year that you and I met, and that seems both yesterday and a lifetime ago. It so much has changed, and I don't know. It's very saturated now, but there's still so many new channels that have opened that are offering so much and so much value.
I think it's better now.
I enjoy finding new channels with new approaches to doing it. And generally the guitar industry is I don't want to say getting bigger, but certainly refining itself, which is how we can kind of move on to the topic of overseas guitars, everywhere's overseas because it depends where you are. But Dan and I both had some experiences recently with the guitars coming from places that shouldn't make good guitars, making great guitars. And obviously Dan's here, he can talk about Ibanez stuff, and I can talk about Ibanez stuff. And Phil, you've got a multitude of brands. I was in Vienna yesterday at a music shop, and I played the new Revstar series from Yamaha, which I know, Phil, you've also played recently. I played the Element, which is made in Indonesia. I played the Standard, which is also made in Indonesia. And I played the Professional, which is made in Japan. And firstly, the Element was phenomenal. 400 and something euros, let's say 500, phenomenal guitar, way better than many guitars I've played around that price 10 years ago or 5 years ago even. And then the interesting thing was that the difference between the Standard Indonesian and the Professional Japanese, from a build quality point of view, not that much different. It really blew me away.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, before I say anything else, I have to tell you this.
Sure.
The way you say Indonesia is so beautiful. All right. Like I butcher the English language, and you speak it so beautifully. You know what I mean? I just want to say, it just sounds so great the way you say it. Yeah, like the way you said it, I was like, that sounds so exotic. I need something from that place.
That's how you sell them.
Now I feel pressured. Indonesia.
See, that's great.
Okay. I'm very conscious of how I'm saying words now. It is very hard to talk. But yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Phil, have you had experiences that I know you've done your own show on this very topic, which was one of the reasons we asked you on to talk about this, because it ties in with what we've been feeling recently. But in a nutshell, what's your take on this?
It's a hot button for me, this subject, right? It's something I'm very passionate about on many levels. And it all really comes down to, first of all, the education of it drives me nuts, which is why we're talking about it. It's why I think channels are going to be talking about this for a few years. It's going to take a while to get everybody caught up to what's what's really going on with manufacturing and the way things are built now. And first of all, one of the things that kind of started this for me, we all started. If you're over 40, let's just start that. If you're over 40, there is my first real guitar, and I mean this like I'm no sarcastically. Like the first time I bought my first real guitar, that was my first experience. I never experienced this kind of talk before. I walked in the music store and they're like, oh, you get an American Strat. Otherwise, you can get a Japanese Ibanez. And then the younger guy would be like, the Japanese Ibanez is as good as the American guitar. And then the other guy's like, oh no, nothing makes like the American guitars. And then you're like, this is weird. Like, think about this. I love telling the story, this part of the story. There was more talk about where the guitar was made, what country, than there was when the first time I went on a dealership to buy a car. Like, there was like, right? Like, I remember the car salesman didn't go, oh, you buy American because of this. And if you buy a Japanese car, it's got better gas mileage. There was no talk like that for the whole, in a purchasing conversation. Maybe personally, like I grew up, around, like my wife's father. Obviously I've known her since I was 13. So I've known him since I was 13 too. He's a superintendent for electrical company. They're union. It's union talk, right? You buy American because a union is a thing here in the United States. That's a talk, right? They wouldn't buy a Japanese made car, period, because you'd never pull up to your job site in a car that's not American when you're an American union. Okay. That is a conversation that we've heard as kids. You'd hear that, but that didn't connect in any other way than that's just job pride, job union kind of logic. And so you take that with you, right? And then you take this idea that they gave to me, right? The store, these people, these guitar players, that there's Japanese guitars in America. By the way, I bought the Ibanez. I bought the RG 770 in laser blue over the Fender Strat.
Right.
The DX or the regular one?
The DX. And here's why I bought it, because it was expensive at the time. It was $750. It was a big deal. It was my graduation present. And I could have had that. And trust me, in the long term, it was probably not the best decision financially, because I was either buy that or a Fender Strat with the what one was it? The one with the lace sensors and the burst finish. I forgot what series they called that, but they're collectible now. But the whole reason I bought it had nothing to do with other than the Ibanez bridge looked expensive and the Fender bridge looked cheap. Okay. Like that was my purchasing logic at the time. Like, what was I getting for an insane amount of money? $750 might have been $10 million as far as I was concerned, right? I mean, I'm 18 and this is my graduation gift, right? This is a big deal, right? Yeah. And I'm like looking at them, and it was just as simple as the Ibanez looked more expensive. Like I was in wood shop, sharp angle holes on the wood. It looked harder to do than rounding them over. You know what I mean? The inlays, the shark teeth inlays, looked more elaborate than dots. Like, I physically made it a consumer decision based on this guitar looks more expensive to make. Ergo, this is why it's a better purchase with my dollars. Like, I didn't know the whole Fender history, right? You know what I mean? Like, oh, Fenders, they didn't have me that way. So then you fast forward to the next time it comes up, which is Korean guitars, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, then there's American, then Japanese, then Korean, right? This is like this stair-stepping thing that we all started getting into.
Sure. Yeah.
I believe, and I always, again, it's a hot button subject, so I warn everybody. I believe it started intentionally as a whole as just classifications of factory quality, right?
I agree. I 100% agree.
Like, that's just as simple as that. Like, this Gibson factory makes good stuff. This Fujijin factory makes good stuff. This factory we don't know, so we don't know it. You know what I mean? And it seems pretty good for the dollar. You know what I mean? So literally the classifications of, and it sucks because we could have probably gone a lot farther as a guitar society if we would have stopped talking about country of origin and just factories. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This is Cortec. This is Samick. This is World Manufacturing. This is Mir. You know what I mean? Just where stuff is physically built. Fujijin, right? I forget who makes the Yaris. They're made in Japan too, but beautiful, shop that builds those as well with skilled laborers. The Alvarez Yaris. So then but this is why, and then I'll give the mic back over to you guys. But this is where I'm going to start the mess. Okay, this is my mess.
Friend. You continue.
Yeah.
Here's why I get upset about it.
Okay,
I believe it's a rigged, fake game. Okay. And it starts there, and it upsets me. And here's why it upsets me. So you see a guitar like Cort manufacturers, right? We use Cortec because they're good. They make a guitar, you pick it up, and you go, this is flawless. So obviously, this is what they can make. So why didn't they make this for brand X? And you ask them off the camera, off the record, and they say, well, that's not how they spec'd it. They spec'd it to be substandard to their line they're making. Mm-hmm. And I pick on the big three because they're fun to pick on, which is Fender, Gibson, and Paul Reed Smith. And I'm friends with a lot of those people. So it's not to insult the people there. It's just, this is the lineage that they've created. They specifically go, okay, here's a great guitar. And now here's an affordable version of it that we decided wouldn't be as good.
Exactly.
And then the consumer goes, oh, well, the problem is the Indonesian guitars can't be as good as the blah, blah, blahs. And I'm like, yeah, but they set that standard. Like, it wasn't the factory couldn't meet the standard. It was they remove these things, change this carve, and that's where where it gets tricky now. And this is where YouTube has changed the game, because it's just YouTube that came in and did it. It was the first time a company realized that, and I mean a small company, they could go to Andy, the guitar geek, send him a guitar, send a container of guitars to Amazon Fulfillment Center, have him do a video. They don't need sales agents anymore to go and drive across the country and get in each little store, right? They literally can go, okay, we're going to go straight to the consumer. Andy gets the guitar, and I'm speaking for Andy, but I don't mean to be. So I'll just make fun of myself too. I'll just do it.
No, so far, so you're accurate.
Yeah,
you're accurate.
Yeah.
Continue.
You get this guitar, and your first thought is, wow, this is really good. Why is it so good, right? When it's made in this country, right? Whatever that means, right? And I've had too many stories now where I've talked to a small manufacturer, and I go, wow, this is really good. And then they'll say something like, well, we make these for this other company. And I go, oh, you do? And they're like, yeah. And I'm hearing it more and more as a YouTube channel, more probably than as YouTube channels, we're hearing it more and more. Like the companies that are making the guitars for the manufacturers. And just to put Dan in the right spot, Ibanez and PRS and the bigger guys, they've actually kind of excluded themselves for a lot of this by building their own factories there. Like, you have an Indonesian factory that you guys control, right? PRS has a factory in Indonesia that control Cortec, right? I say control because I don't care if you own the building, whatever, but it's they make your stuff. That's it, right? Yeah. But we know the sub brands, I don't want to say sub brands, but the less larger brands, they are contracting to multiple different factories wherever they can, right? And those factories are figuring out real fast that they can start building their own guitars and then sell them direct. And what I don't like is, I don't mind if somebody says, oh, the Chinese guitars are not as good as American guitar. I like that statement. That's the most common we're all going to hear every day. And I go, well, that's not true, right? They can build a guitar exactly the same way as they want. If you have political reasons, if you have other reasons for not wanting to buy the guitars, that's fine. Like, I'm willing to hear that, and that's your opinion, and you can have that. But as a guitar channel, and not CNN or Fox or whatever, right? I could care less what those people talk about. As a guitar channel, all I care about is it stays in tune, the fretwork's done well, right? Like the quality of the guitar. And so all I want to have is that conversation, right? Where are quality guitars made, and how can I get them for the least amount of money as possible so I can put my kids through college, make my car payment, pay my electric bill.
Sure.
And so let's start there. Any opinions on that?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in, Dan. Right, Dan's going to take a breath. I started playing guitar in the early 90s, 93-ish, 92, 93. And back then, I had this feeling, this belief that I would go to a guitar shop, and there were plenty back then, and if they didn't sell Fender or Gibson, I thought, well, this is a terrible guitar shop. They've got other guitars. And I didn't even look at what guitars they had if they did not have Fender or Gibson. So really good marketing, really good belief system already in place. And I think this has now been transferred to country of origin of guitars, so that people have this false perception of what is right. And I'm going to pick on Epiphone for a moment, because I've noticed this recently, that when I played guitar when I first started playing guitar, Epiphone was a beginner's brand and was a very accessible brand. And my second guitar was an LP 100, and it's a bolt-on Les Paul, thin body, and I wanted a standard, but that was about twice the price as the LP 100. And I still, in my mind, think Epiphone is an accessible brand, but they're not. They're coming out like a Les Paul standard is now like €800 or €700, and now Epiphone are bringing out sort of the what do they call them? The 100 with the Melody Maker pickups. So they moved their standards, they moved their accessible range up in price, and then reintroduced these other lower priced models to replace what would have been that price 20 years ago. Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying about guitar companies falsely creating these divisions of price and therefore saying, well, this one we're going to build it in China. And as you say, it doesn't matter where it's built. If they have the same materials and the same skills and the same budget, it's pretty much going to be the same guitar, I believe.
Yeah, I did it was on the fly. I was kind of proud of myself. I did a Reddit Ask Me Anything. And one of the questions that stuck with me was somebody said, in this current age of CNC machines, can somebody make a better guitar than John Suhr, like a Suhr Guitars? And so I said, well, I think if I locked John Suhr in a factory in China and told him he couldn't come out till he brought me a great guitar, he could build a great guitar. You know what I mean? So that tells me that they could build a great guitar, because I can't imagine a world where he comes out and says, Phil, I went to all their tools and I looked over everything and they just didn't have the equipment to make a good guitar, so I gave up. Like, you know what I mean? So the reality is, especially guitars, like, you know, they're not very complicated to make. They're just very complicated to make over and over consistently well.
Consistency. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Grover Jackson has an amazing quote somewhere, and I'm going to misquote it, but I promise I'll get you within 80% of the actual quote. He said, guitar players want machine tolerances out of wood. Right. And, and I'm like, oh, perfect. But perfect by definition is what he's saying, right? They want every Ibanez RG 550 Genesis to play and sound and be the exact same. Mm-hmm. And Ibanez and other companies, and we're just saying Ibanez because why not? They go through hell and back to bring us this consistency and get as close as they can, right? And but overall, like, that's why when somebody goes, I can build a guitar as good as them, I'm like, yeah, you can build a guitar as good as them. Build me 5 guitars as good as them. I bet you I'll find one turd in your 5. You know what I mean? Because that's the irony, is the consistency, right? Which is what is another benefit of sourcing guitars in inexpensive places, because you can improve your quality assurance by having more rejects. What do you mean by that? Dan's looked up. So let me run it to you this way, Dan. I believe that a quality guitar company is all about how many bad guitars get in the guitar player's hands.
Sure. Yeah, because that's the only factor that you have in your hands. How many bad guitars are you letting out?
Right.
Do you invest in QC? Yeah.
So the skill is obviously to make a good guitar, but the real skill is to stop the end user from getting a bad guitar.
Correct.
Right. So and here's why, in almost every decision that when you deal with manufacturing starts the same way. The employee, look, I hang out with all the employees. They all have the same stories. Every manufacturer's got the same dirty secrets. They go, I went to my boss today, Phil, because they're just talking, right? I went to my boss today and I showed my boss this guitar and I said, this didn't pass. And he said, it's good enough. Just get it in the case and out the door. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And the irony of that is that's the magic of stopping that from happening, which is why I think Schecter becomes so, the rebranding of Schecter when they started making guitars in the 2000s. I think that's why they took us over by storm, because we were picking up guitars and we're like, wow. And it was because now we know it's because they were sorting everything in Long Beach and probably in Europe too, obviously, because it was sorting, right? They were sorting everything by stopping the rejects from getting to the end users.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's why I said it's a different world now. And that's why we got to unfortunately try to explain this to the viewers, the guitar player and viewer public, because one thing that's really weird, you guys were mentioning, everybody mentions this, like, oh, you had a store for a decade. it's irrelevant. Just touching 800 different guitars as a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told you, I was in the corporate world and I did risk management. I would pay somebody, like the average YouTube channel I see, I would pay them if I owned a guitar company. I would stop them from making YouTube videos. I would hire them to essentially as a consultant to explain what everyone's doing, because I'm going a little sideways on this, but because Andy's nodding at me, so I know he's kind of experiencing the same thing about what I'm about to say, which is, Dan, you work for basically Ibanez. You see Ibanez, okay? Paul Reed Smith, he's a genius. He sees his guitars all day. That's all he sees, right? Mm-hmm. My joke is, you look it up and down. You look at your base model to your most expensive number. I'm looking left to right, across the brands to your left and to your right, and I'm comparing everything. And every guitar player could say this. Like, I've tried a ton of guitars. I'm like, look, I'm glad you picked up guitars at Guitar Center. I'm glad you bought a lot of guitars. But when you're at the volume, this is some pro level volume, these YouTube channels that like us pumping out hundreds and hundreds of different guitars. I mean, to the point where if you really want to learn something, it's when you're doing your 300th guitar review and you're trying to analyze what makes this guitar different than the other 299. You become really skilled at figuring out what everybody's doing really right and wrong and slightly off. You know what I mean? Yep. And that's why
you have your usual suspects as well. The points where if that's good, then everything else has to be good, and if that's bad, then everything else is usually bad.
And you start learning where everybody hides their mistakes and what they focus on, right? My favorite thing now is we talk about it on inexpensive guitars. The finishes are getting so much better. And it's because, well, one, it's the process is getting more refined. The way they're doing the paints is getting a little bit more refined. But more importantly, it's where companies start focusing, like, okay, this is what the user is going to look for. This is where quality is going to be, right? You know how many times you open up a guitar and it's beautiful in every way, and then you look inside of it and it's just a disaster. And it's because that's not where the employee was told to focus, right? The employee was told, more time on the buffing wheel, less time on cleaning up the solder work, right? And
I think that's pretty fair. I must say that the guitars I've opened recently, which I do open now in every video I've been doing for a while, the soldering work is fine. I always like to look at the finish inside, of course, and I don't know. Generally, so this is another subject or sub-subject, is that because companies know that YouTubers are going to pump out that one video that could sell hundreds of guitars, do the YouTubers get a slightly different guitar to the average user? A cherry-picked one, or is it as random? And I know that's another question for another day, but this whole other levels now of companies being switched on to how important a YouTube review can be, and just bringing light to those subjects.
Now, prospectively, because this is I know, because you're obviously in Europe, this will probably help you a little bit. The YouTubers in the US, that's how it breaks down. There's YouTubers obviously in the US, there's YouTubers in Europe. Obviously they're everywhere, but I'm just saying as groups, we talk about this pretty often. For some reason, Europe as a whole figured out, which Dan and I have talked about this, obviously at the hitting event stuff. Europe understands YouTube and social media. They somehow understood it. American guitar companies are lost. They're just totally lost. I don't mean I don't mean because a lot of them don't even work with social media in any way. that's what I'm picking on, right? It's not this is what I do, so I think everybody should do it with me kind of thing. It's more of they don't even understand what you're doing, right? They don't take the time to watch one or two of your videos. Like, how many companies, like, I take the guitars apart. You know how many guitars have flipped out on me because they're like, what the hell did you do? And I'm like, didn't you watch any of the videos where I was going to take your stuff apart? Like, I literally go, that's what's going on. And I go, and I tell them, I go, and I tell them, I go, I don't take them apart because I care. I can give a crap. That's not something I focus on. I take it apart because that's the evolution of this platform, is that more and more information has to be given to the consumer, because here's why. Like we talked about 2017 earlier, not being so long ago, right? And being so long at the same time. there is less people probably watching, in my opinion, there's less people watching your video today that have touched the guitar you're talking about than there was 5 years ago. What I mean by that is, if I did a video 5 years ago, I would say 20% of the audience had seen that guitar, touched it somehow, right? Now, 5 years later, I think that number is decreasing and decreasing to where the people watching your videos haven't physically touched any of this stuff. They have no reference of anything now. And
Agreed.
how do you give this experience to somebody of this is what's quality and this is what I'm saying? You know what I mean? When all you have is visual, so you got to be very visual with your review, and that means looking at stuff. And in the US, it's kind of weird because, and the reason I tell you that is because this is the question comes up a lot. Like you said, it comes up like, well, do they send the YouTube channel special guitars? And although I have had that experience, right? In fact, I tell everybody anything. That's probably why some, whatever. I had two companies when I started doing the sock test on my guitars, taking the nylon sock and rubbing the frets. The downfall of that real quick was two companies went so crazy with polishing their frets before. They were so freaked out that they were in their head that they thought I was going to be like, they were going to tear the sock open on their frets. They polished their frets so much the guitar was unplayable because the high E and the low E were falling off the edges. And I had to call them, and I knew something was up because I'm like, why would they do this? And they luckily admitted it right to my, on the phone. They're like, look, we just didn't want to fail your test. And I go, okay, well, obviously I'm going to do the video now, but that's not what I'm looking for. I said, look, I'll, you try to be as polite and nice as you can, right? But I said, but you understand, like, the thing I'm trying to convey is I'm not trying to convey to somebody that a guitar for $300 should be perfect. That's not what I'm trying to convey. I'm trying to set an expectation that if you buy a $300 guitar, this is the kind of fret you get. You buy a $600 guitar, this is the kind of fret you get. There might be exceptions that rule. If someone's, cheap guitars better, some good, nice guitars cheaper, are less quality. But it's about setting that expectation. But what's funny about this is, although those couple cases like that, 99% of the time when companies send me guitars, dude, I get guitars. I do the video, and sometimes out of courtesy, if you're a smaller company, if you're a big company, I have no sympathy. So I just put out the video. Right? If you're a smaller company, I give it to my patrons, and I give it to you too to see it. Right? And, and most of the time it's nice. It's like, oh, thanks for the feedback, and the video's great. But every once in a while, they'll be like, Phil, you mentioned that it has a blemish, but we sent you a B stock. And I'm like, well, you didn't say anything. I get B stocks and damaged guitars all the time sent to me all the time. And so that's why I said when people are like, I don't know, they probably send you the premium guitars. I'm like, I don't know. You know how many, and that's not exaggeration. Do you know how many Sweetwater boxes I have from Sweetwater sent the manufacturer back a rejected guitar, and then that's what they sent me to review, was the rejected guitar they got back from Sweetwater. So I have trouble because I can't unbox it because it's got Sweetwater tape all over it, right? And I don't want people to think it's from Sweetwater because it's not, because Sweetwater obviously rejected it.
Wow. And
then the company's like, we've got a guitar to send you. And so we get a lot on the American side. We get a lot of rejected guitars, a lot of weird stuff. It's because you have to understand, like, the way it works here, and I don't want to get too much in this, but just different than you, and I'm sure this is going to feel different in a second when I tell you this. What we get here is like, they go in a meeting and they go, hey, this social media thing's happening. Who's going to run social media? And they're like, well, I can do that too. And they go, cool, get me 50 YouTube channels. And they literally send out emails to 50 channels. And then you respond and they send you the product. And my most embarrassing thing that I have to tell, I've come to terms with it. It used to upset me to the point where I was just so irritated. I thought I was going to lose my mind. You know how many companies love to send me nice emails that say, hey, Phil, just following up to see if you're ever going to get a chance to do that video. And I'm like, yeah, I did it. It's got 180,000 views and it was out 3 months ago. Thanks for checking.
Damn. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's the good part is this. I just tell you that because I wish the U.S. side would get a little bit more caught up on the European side. You know what I mean? It's a different. It's a different world.
I just find it interesting. Isn't there like a convenient medium between sending YouTubers B stock items versus sending them specifically handpicked items that do not reflect at all what the general consumer will get when they purchase the instrument? Because either way, it can be so difficult or dangerous for a brand. If you receive a B stock or blemish item and you assume this is like regular production quality without even being told it's B stock, then you will see it's lower tier quality. And whereas if Andy, for instance, is doing a video for a brand that has handpicked an instrument, and then like 10 of his viewers purchase that instrument and are completely disappointed because they they put a lot of trust in what he said, and then they receive a subpar instrument in terms of quality. I mean, that's both like the extremes that I don't really think make sense in terms of running your marketing and running your social media business as a company.
Well, this is what I say to companies all the time. It's like there is 0 sense in pushing the odds in their favor for a YouTube review, because at some point it's going to come back on that company. If I lie in a video and say a guitar is great when it isn't, or a pedal's great, or anything, 10 people or 100 people are going to buy that item, and they're going to say, Andy, it's terrible. What are you talking about? And then they don't come back to me. And then I'm useless to the brand. You kill
your views. So you kill your. Actually, here's the sad thing. This is why. And I'm sorry I got on this subject, but this is the part that the companies don't understand. They think this is a views game, and it is for some people. Okay, I love telling people this. My channel was profitable at 30,000 subscribers. It was as profitable as I ever needed it to be. I had a huge community buying tons of merch. Supporting through Patreon. You know what I mean? You get a couple companies sending you out some gear. You get a couple, agreements with a couple companies, right? It's just, different streams coming in. But more importantly, what really helps you is not that you can create because the YouTube now is you got to create a crazy title, crazy thumbnail, try to get people to watch it. But if you can get people to actually give a crap about you in any way, you're guaranteed this, like, I don't care if it's 3,000 or 4,000 views. It's that views comes, and it's not like if you want to use their marketing math, it doesn't work. If they go, well, you get a 1% conversion rate. I'm like, no, not on your diehards. You know what I mean? The diehards that learn to trust you, right? The trust that your opinion has weight and value, that are excited about the things you're going to pick and present, because that's what they're coming for, is they know you're going to pick and present things that are, like, why is Phil talking about Tupperware and blenders now, right? Like, you know what I mean? They know that, They know that you're bringing to them the thing that they're interested in to some degree. And if they're not interested in it, this is the important part, and this is the really important part. If they're not interested in it, they believe that you brought it for a reason. That even though they might go into the video a little apprehensively going, I'm not really into what he's talking about today, but, oh, okay, I see why he thinks this is worth talking about today. The problem is, one bad video, do you see it? It tanks that relationship epically to the point where it takes forever to get it back. Yep. And that's why I said it's and the good part is, and Andy probably can test this too. Now at this point, I think a lot of his channels are so tenured now. I can tell, like, out of the box. I can tell when a company's prepped it. I can tell when a company you know what I mean, has sent me the B stock stuff. And all I do is I just go into it. Well, actually, I'll tell you what I do. That's kind of messed up, but it's true. If I think a company fluffed a guitar for me, in other words, I say in the video, and if you got a guitar and it is not as good as this one, you let the company know by putting the link of this video. I'm like, hey, if they want that to be the standard for them, let them, right?
That.
I love stinging it. That's a sting. I'm like, you let them know. They got to return this and exchange it out for the one that Phil McKnight gets. Like, you just tell them you want the Phil McKnight treatment on this guitar, right?
QC level, regular customer, Phil McKnight treatment. Phil McKnight.
Yeah, well, because like Andy said, no one wants to see a special guitar sent to a YouTube channel.
Yep.
They want a realistic expectation.
Yeah, fully agree. Also, I don't really see a point why a consumer should get a different treatment than a YouTuber or an artist. In fact, like I can tell you a story about how we handle it. Like back in the day, we used to have like a secret kind of code where guitars for artists would go through QC and would like get a special treatment. And at some point, we kind of looked into that and kind of figured, why should an artist get an instrument that's superior to what the consumer is getting. So we kind of got rid of that because we said the standard should be that it doesn't matter if a guitar goes to a YouTuber or goes to an artist or goes to a customer. It should all be par. And of course,
Right.
there will be some returns. That's just the nature of the game, like you just said, because we're talking about wood, and we're not talking about guitars made of aluminum where you can like a tenth of a millimeter or something. So you gotta have some accept that there is some variance in quality level, and there might be some items that are not in the A category. But with that said, I still have firmly believe that it gives a company and a product a bad name if you differentiate between the target groups, because it doesn't matter if you're a YouTuber or if you're a consumer, they all should get a similar quality, and not like the Phil McKnight treatment, for instance. So that's. But
Well,
maybe but let me just follow up on that pretty briefly, because you brought up the factories, and I'm completely 100% your opinion that the quality of an instrument is not influenced by the country of origin at all. It really comes down to machinery, and it really comes down to how many hours you spend to refine what has been produced. Like, what comes out of CNC is not the final product. You still need a lot of manual work and a lot of experience. And also, what is often overlooked is the external factors. If we talk Fujigen, if we talk, let's say, Fender USA, they have a team of luthiers, of very skilled workers that build guitars for decades. Whereas if we talk about Asian factories, if we talk about those regions, they have Chinese New Year's, where a lot of people do not return to factories. They have Ramadan, where they leave the factories and they come back. It's a long break. They have to restart production, etc. So I think this is a big reason why there is at all some sort of variance when it comes to the quality level. If they would have the same working conditions, the same hours to be spent and to hone their skills with the instruments, I would think there would be no difference at all, whether it comes from the USA or from Japan or from China. Just my take on that.
That's the secondary thing that you would love to know, which is, like, that's what I said. This is why this is a hot button subject. As I sigh, you can always tell when you sigh before you start saying something, because you can just hear the internet exploding a little bit. Let's pick a guitar manufacturing as the term where guitars are made, and let's say we just made a list on a dry erase board. What matters and doesn't matter, right? What is relevant to the consumer? Okay, the consumer in the modern ages is concerned about a few things. The treatment of the employees, which is not specific to any one country. Like, I love it when only certain countries bring up that conversation. I'm like, well, it matters in every country and everything. So we should talk about it. If you want to talk about it, don't just pick one country. Let's talk about it, with everybody, because it's happened everywhere. Every manufacturer being the actual factories have dealt with this by moving around and doing stuff.
Sure.
So that's a legitimate thing. And if you really care about that, which I tell people all the time, stop putting comments in YouTube videos and call your legislation and ask for some kind of transparency on that. You know what I mean? Companies should be able to specifically put, like food. Tell me where it's sourced. Is it farm salmon, or is it, right? Or is it right? Where does it come from? Same thing with your manufactured product. Tell me, somebody should be able to open source. Tell me the employees are treated to this degree, right? Or they're given this much standard. And so as a consumer, I can feel relieved knowing, like, okay, why is this so cheap? The sad thing is, and this is why I said it's a sigh moment, I love it, and I'm just going to use China because it comes up the most. Absolutely. I'll review a product made in China by a Chinese manufacturer that's reached out to me specifically, sends me a product, and I review it. It's as good as anything else, and it's dirt cheap because they're selling it direct. And everybody goes, well, it's dirt cheap because the way the people are treated. And I go, well, it's perceptually dirt cheap to you because they removed out so many layers of markup. They took out a sub-manufacturer, which is the wholesaler, to the retailer, right? And you're perceiving it as, why is it 3 instead of 9? Oh, it's because people are treated so bad. Literally, that factory, which I'm not, through some kind of NDA I'm on, I can't tell you that, oh, by the way, they're making your other guitar for your other manufacturers also happens to be $700. But they figured out, like my favorite thing I pointed out to a friend a couple weeks ago was I did a video for a Chinese manufacturer, really nice guy, sent me a guitar. I did a video. We were doing the math. I forgot what we figured out. We figured out with the yen to dollar rate, right? He sold like $19,000 US worth of guitars off that video, which was like 1.3 million yen. And then the average worker in China makes 90,000 yen a year. So imagine how much money that guy made off that, right? But what I couldn't tell, and I still can't tell in this video, is he's making guitars during the day for another manufacturer, and he just started his brand at night on his second shift, right?
Oh, wow.
So what he figured out was I could get 20% making it for somebody else, or he's like, wait a minute, I can send a container to Amazon and get a YouTuber to talk about it, sell direct to consumer, cut the margins, not in half, because it was like 70% off what the guitar would cost by the time it floats with a branding, because you got to get value to the brand too. It's not just markup for no reason. Brands have value for resale value for all kinds of purposes. Sure. The reason I complain about that is, sure, the only thing that makes me laugh is that I find the only reason you see people complaining is because it's got a Chinese brand on it. That gets them paying attention. And then they go, I won't buy from China. And I'm like, great. Well, Epiphone's made in China. There's tons of guitars made in China. They're brand names, but you don't complain about them on those videos. In fact, I can't find any comments on them about those made in China products. You know what I mean? In any kind of videos. And I've actually said this on a podcast, which went over oh so well, which is, you buy a Gibson guitar, it's made in the USA, but, Gibson's factory is not growing. Epiphone factory is growing. So they're just taking your US dollar, US guitar stuff, by the way, sending it overseas and building a bigger Chinese factory. And if you take apart your Gibson guitar, do you have some fun? Because as Andy kind of touched on earlier with the whole, how much is something made where it is, right? Yeah. Well, COVID really taught us a lot. I mean, I had guitar companies like, we can't ship guitars. We're waiting for paint. I'm like, from China. And I'm like, but it's not a Chinese built guitar, but it's got Chinese paint. Okay. And the components came from China and this came from China. And in fact, I was telling my wife as an illustration, I was using a Gibson. Do I have one? I don't have one behind me. I apologize. Gibson SG. And I was saying, okay, the mahogany comes from Indonesia. The rosewood's coming from India, right? I go, okay, that's fine. That's source materials, right? The tuners were from China. The PC board and electronics were all from China. The bridges were coming from Korea, right? The paint, I have no idea where the nitrocellulose lacquer was coming from, but it wasn't coming from the US, right? Mm-hmm. The case came from China, right? and then I'm like, and so again, I was breaking it down, not to so much I'm not trying to substantiate any kind of logic, right? I'm not trying to say this is why you should buy from a source. Mm-hmm. It's more like, just don't say something as blatant as I don't buy from, literally why you're buying from them, just because it wasn't branded to you that way, because it's not about branding it to you. You know what I mean? A great question I got on last Friday's show was somebody asked me, why did Paul Reed Smith move all their amps overseas? And I actually knew the answer, which was that at that point Cortec was building all their parts for their amps and they were assembling them in the US. Yeah. And they were building the wood boxes here in the US and then putting all the boards and parts. And basically Cortec was kind of like, as you know, because you're in this business, the Cortec probably came at him and said, we'll just build the whole thing for you. And this is the price. And the only thing they lost was, now it says made in Indonesia, but it used to say assembled in the USA because it never said made in the USA. All the Paul Reed Smith said assembled in USA. And Paul Reed Smith, what they have to decide, and this is the point that's important, is they had to decide how much is assembled in USA worth. Mm. And the sad thing is, and that's my point, is the value of a product shouldn't be just the printed manufacturer of origin has a value. The value should be who was paid, how were they treated, you know what I mean? What the end user pays, right? All these things. And that's why these discussions, unfortunately, have to be had, because the blatant ideology is just, if this country makes it, it's bad. If this country makes it, it's good. If this country makes it, it's cheap. If this country makes it, it's good. And the companies aren't stupid, right? This is my favorite joke. I hope it makes you laugh. I was in a grocery store once. This is a true story. I was in a grocery store once, and on the aisle, this is true. There was a case stacks of Coca-Cola, and it said gluten-free. When the gluten-free thing was a craze,
Yeah.
And I just laughed. I go, do people who are trying to watch not eating gluten care about their soda pop? Like it was funny to me. What reason I think I make fun of it is obviously some of Coca-Cola realized, we don't put gluten in our soda. We should put that out there, right? Because people will pay premium if they know that. My point is the same thing with our industry. They're going to fight to keep assembled in the USA if they think they can get an extra $300 for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the only reason you're paying that extra $300, isn't that a shame? You know what I mean?
Especially considering that, shipping all that stuff from A to B also has that environmental footprint. It comes with a lot of shipping back and forth. Whereas if you would source and produce where actually the raw materials are coming from, I think that's the most efficient and most sensible way to produce that stuff. Source it, try to build it where it can be made under good conditions, because then you have also more margin if you are saving shipping costs and that, and then ship it out. But I think it's a psychological thing at the moment that people kind of like to have those country of origin labels on certain products so they can justify certain amounts of money.
Yeah.
And instead of if they would try product, just an example, if they would try product with their eyes closed or blindfolded, I'm pretty sure that like 80 or 90% would definitely not be able to differentiate between a, let's say, US made, Mexican made, or Japanese and Indonesian made instrument. If they received the same, let's say, fret edge treatment, same strings, same fret job, etc., literally nobody would be able to differentiate. It really comes down to marketing. It really comes down to attention to detail, and also, like I said, to the variance, the variation, like how much. And this will be interesting in the case of PRS. If they stop assembling amps in the US, will their rejection rate at consumer side be higher with those overseas made amps, or if do they hire a couple people in the factory that are being told every other day what is the criteria, so they kind of take all the faulty or B stock products out of the production queue and kind of only ship what's perceived as A stock. I think this is like the main question, if they can kind of nail that, right?
Well, that's why, like I said, it's going to be, especially on a social media front, it's going to be an education process to discuss the things we see. I had this thing happen in Germany. It was funny. I think of this all the time. I actually used this recently with consulting for a company in Mexico and helped them understand things. I was in Germany, obviously, I think it was after Gearhead University. I stayed a week or two afterwards, and I did some work with some other companies that were in Germany. And one of the things that happened is I worked with a distribution company. We were having lunch. It was me and some other YouTubers, right? We were there having lunch. And they came in and they said, "Hey, so sorry to bother you guys. We have a question for you." They handed us two packages. One was springs, like tremolo claws, and one was bridge saddles. And they were in blister packs, packaging. And they said, "Can you tell us if these are any good?" And so I looked at them and I said, I literally was so nonchalant and casual. I just want to actually illustrate because it's hilarious. I go, I don't have anything to do it. I use my phone. I literally handed it to me. I looked at it here like this. I looked at the package for like a second and I go, "Oh yeah, this is great." And I threw it on the table and I went back, to lunch, right? And then the other channel that picked it up, they go, "Oh yeah, these are good." And then the other channel confirmed, "Yeah, these are good." And the two guys go, how do you know they're good?" And I go, "Oh, they're made in Japan." Because it said made in Japan on the packaging. And they go, "Well, these are our number one sellers, but they're not made in Japan. They're made in China. But we can't figure out why everybody likes them." This is true. They go, "But they put made in Japan on the packaging and they couldn't figure out why." And I go, and then I said, "Well, look, in America, it's like America's good, Japan's good, German's good. Those are quality things, right?" And they go, and they were looking at us like just in shock, right? And everybody's nodding, like all three of us, right? We're just all nodding, like, yeah, German cars are expensive, Japanese cars are good, American, right? Like that's just so I don't need to open it and check it because as soon as I see a part coming from Japan, I know it's good. And so obviously what we didn't know, what was behind the scenes, was the distribution company was trying to figure out, because it's selling so well, what's going on, because obviously the package is being mislabeled, right? And they're concerned about it, but bigger than being concerned about it, they didn't understand it, right? They, for some reason, didn't understand this logic. And what's funny about that is that's real, right? And the reason I tell that story now is because some company figured that out. You know what I mean? It's not the distribution company figured it out. Somebody in China figured out putting Made in Japan on it means and how would you figure that out? Because it's not like it's marked on the actual units. It's tremolo claws and bridge saddles, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why we talk about this stuff, because it's so blatantly like you don't want to just be that simple. Like this is good, this is bad, just because of where it comes from. It should be physical. It should be, this is quality because it's made quality and the employees are treated right. You know what I mean? These are the things that should come into play, more so than anything else, I guess.
Agreed. And to kind of take it back to full circle to what you were talking about at the beginning, is that I think possibly a solution to this change of thinking is it comes into quality control, and certainly not so much the marketing, but the honesty of people, an experience of people picking up, let's say, a guitar, because it's not just guitars that this is relevant to, but picking up a guitar and saying, this is a good guitar. It doesn't matter what name's on the headstock or where it's come from or who built it or what it's in. Guitar players should take a little bit of responsibility to not listen to YouTube videos so much and not listen to marketing so much, and make their own decisions on whether what they have in their hands is good. And then they can say, oh, this is made in China or Vietnam or America or wherever, and then they can re-educate themselves. And I think that's so important to enable this change of thinking.
Right.
It
yes.
has to happen.
You just focus on the quality aspect of it.
Absolutely.
By far. And it's going to slowly correct itself. I'm sure the legislation's getting tougher and tougher. Think of this: Fender can't even put Made in USA on their guitars anymore. They haven't done that for years. They all just say Corona, California, because the laws got so tricky in California about how you label and what percentage of the guitar our product has to be before it can be labeled that way. And I mean, that's just going to evolve that way, but I don't know. Like I said, it's just interesting. And Andy, I don't know about you, but when I make videos, I think it's interesting how the comments come in and what they come, right? Even though I've done the same type of product so many times it's just weird. Like all of a sudden they're like, oh, you could tell this was crappy. And I'm like, how can you tell this was crappy? How is it less crappy than the other thing, or vice versa?
Do you mean in reference to the country of origin, where people just make a decision without even watching? They just read the name of the product, and then they make they don't even make a decision. They just regurgitate this parrot talk that they heard down the local pub or the online gear forum that is the local pub, and say, this is the truth. This is the truth that is universally accepted, that this Chinese guitar, for example, is crap because it's made in China. And this YouTuber, therefore, must be lying to me because he's saying great things about a guitar that I know is crap because it's made in a country that is not the US or not Japan or not Germany, for example.
Yes. What's funny
I hope people... Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I just hope people take more responsibility for their own decisions, because as a much newer YouTuber than yourself and a much younger channel, it's... I know. I'm sure you don't escape this, but the comments that hurt me the most are the ones that say you are lying because of X, Y, or Z. And when that X, Y, or Z is, if you're lying because you get paid, that's fine, that's a given. But you're lying because I know this is crap. They haven't held that guitar in their hands, and they have to take responsibility, because they have to understand that I am playing an example, one of, 500 or 5,000 guitars that have been built. It's not going to be the same as the one you have. Therefore, I'm giving you a universal, hopefully fairly specific review. But you have to take some responsibility in your own hands. If there's 3 in a shop, pick the one that you like the best.
right?
Getting
Well,
off my soapbox now.
no. Ultimately, I internalize too much of this stuff, and so the problem is I, you know, when you, I always use a good example because I love using Pete Thorne as my example. Okay, Pete Thorne is a demo channel. Like Pete very rarely gives you an opinion. In fact, he will give you a little bit of one, but he's told me personally, like he doesn't give opinions. He just performs, right? And he's amazing. You watch him play, he puts it in a song, and the amount of work that goes into each video is insane. Like creating an entire song just to demo a pedal. Like people have no concept of it's 2 full days to 2.5 days of work to do something is just crazy, right? But ultimately, what's funny is the reason I use him as a like a base point of this is that, you know, he can show you how good the product can sound, how an artist can use it, how effective, you know, all that stuff is. That's the demonstration purposes. And so, like I said, I internalize this stuff because what's funny is I try to, like a lot of channels like you, we were kind of like, okay, here's the information. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what to buy. In fact, I'm just giving you information. You do with it however you want. The intent is to put an accurate assessment out so that you come back for more accurate assessments. Exactly. That's the only win in this, right? I use this, Andy, feel free. Well, no, you live in Europe, so you don't have to worry about this. But I said, I use this all the time when I love when people are like, oh yeah, you just work for the companies. I'm like, I don't know. They don't pay my healthcare, my 401k, none of that stuff. And that to me is paid. Like I could care less. You know what I mean? In the end of the day, all I care about is the length of my livelihood, not the, you know, what day is going to, you know, oh, wow, I got a pedal. I'm set for life now. I think I'll take this and go. So to me, ultimately, I care about what the viewers, how the viewers perceive this stuff and what they do with it, because that's essentially the boss, so to speak. And absolutely, when I come at things, I want them to understand, like, okay, this guitar is great. It's expensive and it's great. And it's fun. This guitar is also great, right? Because the best thing about today being literally today, is that I don't care what number. That's why the worst question on a live show is like, hey, if you had this much money, what would you buy? I'm like, you buy whatever you want. That's what's great now. There is no like, oh man, I don't get that. The only thing money doesn't buy you now is brands. Like the music industry is no different now than the clothing industry. You want a nice t-shirt and jeans? Well, whatever you got enough, right? If you want a branded t-shirt and jeans, well, then you're going to have to pay for it, right? And a beautiful example is look at all three of us. We picked an Ibanez today. Dan and I more so are Ibanez fiends. I don't know if you're an Ibanez fiend. I'm an Ibanez fiend. It means I just have this, like, I love them. And it's a branding thing. I mean, because here's the deal. Whatever was exclusive in the recipe of Ibanez, it's been copied and duplicated so much that you can find it at any price point. And to be honest with you, Ibanez is even giving you at every price point now. You know what I mean? There's so like I said, you just try to give that information. But also what I want is, I don't want the viewers or the guitar community, actually more importantly, I don't want them to focus on the wrong things, because then the companies focus on the wrong things. See how it all goes south on you? I want them to focus on. It
feeds into itself, doesn't it?
Yeah. Here's a perfect example, okay, of something I couldn't say in a video. I wanted to. It was driving me nuts. Okay. I did the Urt guitar video a couple weeks ago. Okay. Now the Urt guitar was actually a perfect storm of everything you would want in life. They reached out to me. Viewers already been talking about those guitars. They reached out to me and said, hey, can we send you a guitar? They did. They sent it through Amazon, because that's how they fulfill themselves, is through Amazon. So nobody touched that guitar. Nobody. It came from Amazon. Nobody at Amazon checked it to make sure it's playing right, right? Like they have no control of what gets sent to me, okay? Urt being, okay? Which is, every once in a while that happens, you're like, that's awesome, right? Because you know it's a great start. So, and of course, Amazon, I didn't show it, but it's hilarious. Amazon put it like in a dishwasher box. Like, it was huge. And they, right? Like, I got it. My wife's like, what is this? Like, I don't know. And it was one little wedge guitar box in this giant box. It was the most blatant misuse of box shape size. But here's what I couldn't say in the video. So I open it up, and the way they do frets is the same way that Framus does frets, and Yamaha's doing a couple frets, which is they're rounding them over with a Dremel. And if you guys don't know, you have to cut the frets. You cut the frets for all the width of the fretboard. You round them over with a Dremel. and then you cut the blade short, shallow, and inset them, right? Okay, adds about 10 minutes to the time to do a fret job. Okay, this is what I didn't say. I said that part. I even showed how you do it, but this is the part you couldn't say because the audience has no reference. You have to keep continually educating the audience till they're up to the point where they'll understand what I'm about to say, which is what I'm going to say here, because you can in this environment when we're discussing things. Adds 10 minutes. The fretwork on that guitar took about 40 minutes to do. Okay, that's a fact. I know. I've been to enough factories, that guitar, and I've done enough fret jobs. Just yesterday, this morning, actually, I'm still in fret dust right now. It takes about 40 minutes to do the frets on that guitar. I didn't say that in the video. I said everything else but that because I know if I say it took 40 minutes, everybody go, oh, who cares? I'm like, well, how about this? It takes 30 minutes to do a fret job on a $4,000 custom shop guitar made in the USA. So they took 10 minutes more than a $4,000 guitar took. Right. But then to say that, I would have to say everything I just said to you guys. I have to give you a reference for how long it takes to do it. And how, right. But more importantly, here's the math that's really scary. The guitar was $369, right? So if you got a person rounding over frets and doing fretwork for 40 minutes in a 10-hour, if they do a 10-hour work shift and they don't mess up, and you don't give them that much time and breaks because, that's what they like to bring up in these countries, right? That's 12 guitars a day. Mm-hmm. So you know how many people you have to right? Like Dan's like knows because he's, because Ibanez, and you probably know Andy too. Like, you know how many people you have to now have in rows doing that kind of type of quality fretwork to get enough guitars out the door to make a $369 price point, make any kind of money at all. Yep. And this is, to me, why these podcasts and stuff are so important, and discussionary stuff is so important, because if you start going down this, if I took 10 minutes to explain all that in a 10-minute video, you'd lose half the people. But in a format like this, we could talk about this particular subject, which is what really matters is how much hand time is put on the guitar. What is the machinery they're using and how are they using it? What is their, and this is my favorite question to ask. I've been to 33 manufacturers, and the favorite thing I like to ask, which always either brings a fast, great answer or a slow, horrible answer, which is, what are your safeguards to ensure a bad guitar does not get put in a user's hands? Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
Paul Reed Smith did give the greatest answer known to man, but they changed it. Which was years ago they had their quality assurance department did not connect to manufacturing. So imagine this: you have somebody who runs your manufacturing facility, right? Their job is like, I'm going to say Dan. Pick on you, Dan. Dan, get me 500 guitars built today. Okay, That's Dan's job. Dan goes home, he hugs his kids, spends time with his wife. That whole night is depicted on whether or not he got 500 guitars out the door. If he didn't, it's a horrible night. He can't sleep because his job sucks and he's not doing his job correctly, right? So who messes that up? Well, obviously employees don't show up to work. That's bad. Employees are making mistakes. That's bad. But what can really gunk up the day is QC can not let things pass through, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of companies, a lot of manufacturers will use the term casing. They case guitars at the end. So they cased this many guitars, right? And so they go, okay, we only cased 150 guitars. And Dan's like, why? And then they go, now imagine if your quality assurance department is, they report to Dan, who's the manufacturing person, and they say, well, Phil in quality assurance, it wants to send back 25 guitars. Now, what's to stop Dan? This is why I asked them. What's to stop Dan from going to Phil and going, well, Phil, you just passed 25 guitars. Get them in those cases. Right?
So Dan.
Right. It's so Dan. And so what's funny is there is, that's why I said, what safeguards do you have? How do you make sure that if there's a bad day and something happens and those guitars can't get shipped and it's costly and it hurts the company financially, it hurts everything, right? But it is the right thing to do. How do you ensure that, what are your insurances that your employees aren't just passing the stuff through, right? And you know who gave their worst answer? I just like to throw them under the bus. The worst answer ever was PV Guitars. PV Guitars was telling me one of the questions I asked, because you don't even have to be a manufacturer, you just distribution, right? Like Dan Meinl's distribution, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know if Meinl checks. I don't know what safeguards they have. Okay, so he's nodding. Yes, they do. So a lot of times when you have a guitar made overseas or somewhere else, right, and it's brought into your warehouse, you check them. PV's answer was hilarious. I said, well, how do you check them? They said, well, we check 1 in 100. And I go, okay. And if we get so many bad ones, then we go back and check 1 in 10. And if we get so many bad ones, then we check 1 in 5, right? And then at that point we check them all if they're that bad. And I'm like, oh, so basically, if you get 500 guitars and you check 5 and they're good, you just ship them all out. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my god, right? What are the odds of that being enough? Now I can't hold them to that because they might. That's a gamble.
That's a gamble. Yeah.
But
that's also what differentiates, direct shipment and kind of, missing out certain steps, because those kind of quality steps are like a barrier that kind of keeps those B stock or C stock items away from consumers. That's what, going full circle to what we were joking about at the very beginning. If people kind of only, put the price tag at the sum of the parts, they are missing out that the actual part that makes a difference is those kind of the quality control and the manual work that goes into that to kind of really, pick what is good quality and kind of pick also what's to be rejected. And that's also what kind of justifies a higher price tag and what also justifies distribution. I mean, on the other hand, what would a brand, what on earth would hold the Japanese at Hoshino back from just shipping all their stuff from, let's say, from Japan or from Indonesia direct? Or what would hold back a company like Music Man to ship their stuff from the US or from Indonesia? There's just because they are sold to the idea that they want to not ruin their brand image by shipping out instruments that are sub quality, that do not meet the expectation of the consumer. And this is where I see also the value of a distributor, that logistics. Nobody can beat Amazon when it comes to logistics.
True.
But everyone, literally everyone, can beat Amazon when it comes to doing a proper freight job, making sure that everything is nicely packed and quality checked, then ship it to a dealer, and then at the dealer place, make sure that you get your special set of strings and you get your special setup and everything. And this is what kind of differentiates the boys from the men when it comes to instruments. That's also why Gibson kind of bombed with their attempt to sell high-end Gibson guitars on Amazon in Europe. I don't know.
Fender bombed here with Amazon. With anything over $500, it failed.
Yeah, it doesn't work, and that was something to be expected. A lot of people, they were seeing the end of the guitar business when they started, trying to sell €3,000 or $3,000 Gibsons on Amazon. But at the end of the day, it kind of showed that you can't push everything in the digital realm. There have to be instances that correct mistakes that are just natural because of the ingredients, which is like raw materials like wood, or because of the human factor. And this is where I see also distributions like us here, what their value is. It's not shipping stuff. It's making sure that the stuff arrives, making sure you have enough stock that you can deliver, and making sure that every single instrument reaches the consumer at a quality level that makes them smile. And this is also the mission. I'm kind of standing on my soapbox a little bit here, but this is what we are subscribed to. What is, and also what differentiates maybe a brand. To carefully use that term. What maybe differentiates a brand from a OEM manufacturer that's just interested in shipping out stuff without following up and without making sure that certain quality levels are met.
Well, a perfect example of that is how you've executed over the years. That's how I met you, right? It was through these events. You guys were sponsoring events. You guys brought Ibanez's to the events, and that is another additional part of the distribution's job, is to make sure the product is obviously taken care of, but also seen in front of the right people, right? And get feedback. Think about this. I've learned this. All this interaction I've had with you over the years, and obviously now Andy's with you every week, giving you feedback. I hate the term influencer. I've always hated the term influencer.
Makes me barf.
Yeah, it makes me barf. Unfortunately, I would love it if I was on YouTube and I did skit comedy, and maybe you could call me then something, or an entertainer. Essentially, all I am is I'm everyone who watches my channel. I'm just the guy that started making videos. Right? That there's just a bunch of people making videos, just a bunch of people. And so reason I say that is it doesn't work the way the companies think. I don't say a thing and then my audience does a thing like an influencer does. Exactly. It's the opposite. Exactly. I'm part of my audience, so I generally think like my audience and vice versa, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? If this week I decide to sell 5 of my guitars, I would imagine as a company you should be scared, because I bet you everybody's selling 5 guitars, because whatever I'm doing, they're doing, and vice versa, because it's less of a I want people to listen to what I say and more of I want to talk to people about the thing I love talking about, and I have to create a forum for it, right? So that there's a place to congregate, whether it be videos or live or whatever, just like Andy. And I always try to tell the companies, it's stop. You don't. That's why I said like U.S. companies are a little different than European companies. A la there's why Dr. Dan's here, because Dan gets it. He's come to the events and he's been part of the community, right? And he doesn't look at like Andy like, okay, if Andy tells everybody the new flip-flop color on Ibanez is good, then we'll sell a lot of them. I'm like, that's not how it works at all. How it works is if Andy says it is good, that's a great representation of the fact that a lot of people watching it are going to think it's good too, because he's of the same mindset. He speaks the language of his people, so to speak, right? I know it sounds cheesy.
I like that. Yeah, that makes me sound amazing.
Yeah. And that's why this stuff's important, and that's what Meinl offers, is not just checking the Ibanez guitars as part of Ibanez's right thing. It's making sure that Ibanez is doing the right things, getting feedback back to Ibanez that's helpful, right? Collectively. Think of this. I told you guys, I have a whole different life before I came in the music industry, which is risk management, right? I mean, I used to be, like, I chuckle sometimes. I go, I used to be in charge of billions of dollars, no exaggeration, and reporting and stuff. And data is huge, right? And then I would laugh when like I told you, 2017, I'm at the NAMM show, and I'm sitting there going, dude, if 5,000 guitar players congregate in a video and what do you call it? And echo the sentiment of that video, right? Not listen to it and then be brainwashed by it. That's not what we're talking about. If they echo that sentiment, you know how hard it is to collect that data? You know how hard it is to collect what the pulse of what the industry is doing? You know what I mean? Will headless guitars take off? Should we invest in headless guitars? Well, you can shoot from the hip and guess, sure, but you could also talk to these people that are in these communities and see, what's going on. Like, I made a joke about headless guitars that I love saying. It's my favorite joke ever. You know why? Why headless guitars are like stairs?
Why?
Because the older you get, the more they suck. So back to debt. Now, where did that joke come from? It came from this. Every time I've done a video of a headless guitar, when I look at my analytics, the average age is about 10 years younger than my average other videos age, which means only the younger people as a whole. Like, I always get somebody going, I'm 63 and I like headless guitars, feels wrong. You're the exception. You're not the rule. I still love you. What I'm saying is that if I do a video with a headless guitar, it brings in a younger group of players. And if I bring and a Fender headstock brings in a slightly older group of players than the average, right? It moves. And as a company, I would be like, okay, so what you're saying is we need less headless guitars, you know what I mean, for this group, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what you do in these communities. That's why I said when I talk to companies here, they don't have the benefit of what you guys have there. They still operate off if we get 50 people on YouTube to say it's good, it's good. I'm like, that's not how it works at all.
It's a fight I have several times weekly.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I think we're already like almost an hour over our usual show duration. So maybe to kind of wrap it up on a higher note, or a brighter note, what do you guys think? Like, if you compare your first guitar with what has been offered to beginners today, from the YouTuber perspective, how do you see that, the development? Isn't that, like, at least what I see, isn't that kind of uplifting to see that when it comes to bang for the buck, and also reducing the barriers of connecting with your instruments is has so much improved, and the quality that you get at even at a lower price tag is already so good that people can basically really focus on the instruments and are not being put off by bad frets or tremolo systems that will not stay in tune. How do you see that kind of development also from a manufacturer point of view?
I'm not sure what your question was, but I
Yeah.
can tell you that my first guitar was a Hohner LX90, and it's hanging on the wall in the other room.
All right.
Compare
Okay.
that to that cost £199 with a Squier 10 amp and a snap and case and cable and a couple of picks. If in today's money, I looked at, that's about £350 these days, so about €400, about $420.
Yeah.
What you get for that money these days is considerably easier to play and more enjoyable, and will inspire more musicians to keep at the guitar than what I had back then. So I'm not saying it's better. I'm just saying all those boxes it needs to tick to make sure that baby guitar player turns into a fully fledged, person that wants to play guitar for the rest of their life and is a guitarist. Now, it's more opportunity for that to happen.
Yes. Well, we know. So to answer, I think, Dan's question, everything is great now, which is why there's so much need for opinion. You don't need someone's opinion when your options are crap and good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. The irony is, as it's became the fact that it's getting harder. Think about this: it's getting harder to make a bad purchase. I mean, don't get me wrong; they're out there, right? But I mean, you could take, I don't know, any dollar amount for a pedal, an amp, or a guitar and go make a purchase online or in a store. And physically, it's getting harder and harder to walk out with a bad purchase, new or used, right? Like my favorite thing to laugh about is, like, I'm a bass player, right? So this is the thing I love laughing about now. You can walk into almost any music store now and see a top of the line Ampeg SVT that's 10 years old or 15 years old for a quarter of what it was 10 years ago, because no one wants to lug heavy amps around anymore. But this is literally something that's on albums and toured the world. You can pick it up dirt cheap, right? So if somebody goes, it's really hard to find a good bass amp. No, it's not. In fact, you trip over them sometimes in stores as they're just laying around. And same with guitars. But that's why there's so many channels now. And that's why I said it's good that there's more channels, because it's not about the opinion. It's about getting things on your radar, because it is option paralysis. You just literally like, okay, what's a good guitar for $300? That's what I said. The worst question. I don't think, maybe I'm unique in this way on my channel, but the worst question is like, what's the best guitar for $300? And you're like, I don't know. Almost all the $300 guitars are great. What's the best guitar for $100? I don't know. I found like a crap ton. In fact, you ever go into music stores now and just laugh at how many like cheap good guitars they have laying around that they can't even sell because they just have so many cheap good guitars? They just it's like it's a hindrance. We just have too many cheap good guitars. We're choking on them, and you're like laughing because it's So I think so. That's my answer to your question: is everything's better now than my JB or player from.
I would so love to travel back in time and see you do the sock test like 15 years ago.
Oh, well, I remember I live in the desert, so fret sprout is a big deal. But the sock test, all that stuff that I do is because I told you guys I've been to, like I said, over 30 factories around the world. And when you go to them, one of my favorite things is when they take you in the dry room, right? And they always say this, like, just, it's like 107 degrees, like, 17% humidity. I'm like, great. So it's like 5 degrees cooler than where I live and 10% more humid. So, so I laugh because this is 100% true to the point where I almost want, like, this is my cause in life. That's why I'm so focused on fret work, because I get it sometimes. It's pushback. So people are like, why are you so, like, you talk about frets so much on your videos, it's annoying. Here's why. 10 years ago, not 20, because 10 years ago, we always, where I live in the desert, we always did fret work. I don't care. Like if you bought a guitar from Washburn in Chicago, right, in Illinois, USA made, it would come here and in a week, somebody would walk in your store going, I need fret work done, because they necks just shrink, right? It's a, Arizona, it's a dry heat. That's our slogan, right? It's so hot and dry here. And so we always did fret work. It was just a thing. But within the last 10 years, it's happening everywhere all the time. Like everyone, like people in Brazil are like, yeah, I got fret sprout. It's like 89% humidity all the time. Like, yeah, how's that possible? Right. And here's where I think this goes. So, as a guitar in a tech, fret work gets more expensive each year, because the reality of it is that there's things that are easy to do on a guitar. So techs generally don't charge a lot to do it because it's easy, right? Sold in the concept of difficulty, right? But guitar techs are slowly changing, and I mean this around the world, to charging for time, something techs never did, because it would never make sense, right? Like, think about this. It takes twice as long to do the frets on a Squier as it does an American Strat. It just does. Obviously, they need more work, right? But if you notice, like, guitar players are so conditioned to, like, how much is a fret job? $50. Whether it's your Paul Reed Smith or it's your Squier. Yet, even though I'm taking an hour and a half on the Squier and 30 minutes on the PRS, I charge the same rate. And techs always use the law of averages, kind of like, okay, well, except for here's what's happening. It's mostly now cheap guitars, right? And the expensive guitars are doing it to you as well. So you're now all of a sudden you're getting inundated with more work, right? That takes up more time, and you're watching the rates increase. My prediction, which is happening right now, so it's not even a prediction anymore. It was a prediction 2 years ago when I was saying it, is that as guitars continually to get less expensive, because they're still on that trend as a whole, the work to fix them is going to get extremely expensive, to the point where it's going to get crazy, where it's going to be like, it's already getting like that. How much is a Harley Benton? $300. It's a good guitar. How much does it get fretwork done? $300. And people are going to go, oh my God, that's what I paid for the guitar. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, you got to learn to do it yourself, right? So
you're saying we should start selling guitar tools?
No, yes. Well, you should definitely learn to do as much work as you can, because the rates are just going to keep getting more expensive as it happens. But also, it's important to bring up, because the best term I ever heard when it comes to manufacturing guitars is fast and slow guitars.
Right.
You ever heard this term before, Dan? I don't know.
No,
Okay.
no.
In fact, it's killing me right now because I can't even tell you. But there's an American manufacturer about to release. I'm going to get in so much trouble. I can't tell you. I can't tell you the whole, but I'll tell you this. There's an American manufacturer about to release a series of guitars, and secretly they're called fast guitars. And it's because of what I'm about to tell you, because it's not, so I'm not the only one using the term, is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Fast guitars and slow guitars. The term is a mass-produced Indonesian guitar. I'm just picking the Indonesian, are fast. They're made quickly. In other words, made, less hand time on them, less total time. So basically a guitar from, see, again, not worrying about, even though I said country of origin, not worrying about that. It's like total time to make an Ibanez GO is 6 hours. Let's just throw in a time, right? We're talking about complete, painted, the whole 9 years, 6 hours, right? I'm just throwing these aren't real numbers, but they'll just make sense. Time to make a Prestige, 23 hours, right? The idea is then you can call one guitar as a fast-made guitar and one's a slow-made guitar, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's why the prices change. Manufacturers, I slowly watching them more and more talk in this language, right? How many guitars can they make? Paul Reed Smith was really hardcore about this when he made the S2 line. Remember, it was all about how fast can he make a guitar in his American facility. You're seeing it more and more with manufacturers saying this exact kind of logic, which is, okay, this guitar is made faster. Fender did it when they did the Highway series. They would do the finishes in satin, right? Mm-hmm. Because obviously we all know satin finishes are a lot faster to spray and cure and do. So faster made guitar costs less. And that's really the reality of it. You know what I mean? So the reason I tell you that is the fast guitars, part of the problem is they're not getting the fretwork done.
Yeah.
And that's where you're and so what's happening is before is where you had a guitar player that's used to buying a guitar, inexpensive guitar, buying some pickups, throwing them in there. But now it's do some pickups, do some tuning keys, fix the frets, right? You see what I'm saying?
The frets is where people stop. That's where they're reluctant to experiment there.
Yeah, so. In my personal travels, most guitar players will stop if they're learning to tweak on their guitars. They stop at frets and nut. You know what I mean? Doing that work and fretwork. That's the thing they're afraid to mess up. Mm-hmm. And then that in turn is why you get to charge more for it now.
Right, Phil. I'm going to have to stop you there. I really don't want to, because not only have I enjoyed this, I have been schooled. I have renewed my respect for you. The people of my channel and the Guitar Stories podcast world will definitely have enjoyed this. And I feel genuinely honored and reinvigorated to have you on the show. So thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. But we have to stop because we're way over time. But if you want more of this, then we can come to your podcast and live and do stuff. And I actually am now, because I've forgotten. Honestly, now I being a YouTuber, we don't get to watch other people's videos, and I've forgotten how much I enjoy your way of doing what we do. So, yeah, I'm going to come back. I'm back on the Phil McKnight train, and I'm going to come and watch, and I'm going to come and bug you, and I absolutely want you back, like, once every 4 weeks, because it's so much fun having you on. Phil,
we'll
thank
call that
you
the bonus
so
edition.
Much.
Yeah. the full Phil McKnight treatment.
Yes. Oh no. Yes.
So, Phil, when and where can we catch you live on your channel? You have your own podcast.
I do it every Friday at 3 Pacific Standard Time, and then of course it's like you guys, it's put on all the platforms. But it's an edited version. I don't know if you guys do that. We do edited version. Listeners don't get the same version as the video.
Yeah, I kind of do some work on it, but not like I always wonder how much time do you spend on actually do the timestamps?
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
let's leave it at it's horrible. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't want to be rude, but
no,
I am being rude.
Yeah.
Right, Valeria, thank you so much. One of our moderators for putting Phil's channel link in the video live chat, even though I'm sure, Phil McKnight, you don't need to know what his channel's called, because everybody knows Phil. But thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. I thank you for having me on. Thank you.
You are 100% welcome.
Yep.
And Ryan from 60 Cycle Hum is also watching, and now when we finish, it means he can release his video, because he was waiting for us to finish before he could put a video live. So
then everybody go watch 60 Cycle Hum's video after this.
Get ready and go and see his video.
Yes,
Great.
I'll go watch it right now too.
Before we leave, Dan's going to ask the audio listeners to rate us 5 stars on the iTunes store, etc.
Yeah, of course. Like every week. If you haven't done so, please grab your cell phone or your wife's cell phone or your dog's cell phone and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes or a review on Spotify, because this will help us to get some more visibility and get Phil back on the show and other exciting guests. And it's been a pleasure, Phil. Thanks so much for joining. We've been wanting you to have you on the show for quite some time, and I can't wait to have you back and talk more. There are still so many fields we haven't even slightly touched, so that might make up for a wonderful follow-up conversation at a later point of time. So thanks so much for joining us.
No, thank you guys.
Okay, live chat people, thanks for joining us live, and future people on audio, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Guitar Stories Podcast, your #1 show for everything guitar.